What's up, everybody? One Fun Guy podcast coming at you live tonight. I don't know what I'm going to get into tonight. I don't know what's going to happen. This is going to be the precursor for the pod cult, which is going to happen at 10 p.m. Central Standard Time. So right now we're just kind of hanging out here on TikTok, seeing what we can get into, seeing who's on, seeing who's live. Cakes for Days, what's up? That sounds delicious. I love cake. Cheesecake especially. But anyways, we're just gonna kind of hang out tonight, guys, see what is gonna happen, see who's on, see what we can do, see what we can get into. Beth, what's going on? How you feeling? It's been a while. And I know I've said it before, guys, but my TikTok schedule is kind of all over the place, guys, right? Like, I try to go live Friday nights and Saturday nights as much as I can. Last night, I had a bunch of stuff to do. I went live on Instagram, I went live on Facebook, and I went live on YouTube, which was kind of, I think, my first or second time going live on YouTube. And I actually really, really enjoyed it. So not to say that I won't come on TikTok anymore, but like I really, really, really enjoyed the YouTube experience on and off. Off and on, good. Well, I hope it stays more on than off, and I hope you feel better, Beth. I know we were talking about doing a podcast next month as well, together again. So let me know what dates in September work for you. I know it's kind of hard in advance to plan that, but I definitely want to do that in September and then again in October too with you. So we'll plan that for sure. That'll definitely happen. But other than that, guys, I'm just hanging out tonight. I wanted to go live with my friend Traci. She has a really, really interesting page about dating and it's kind of weird because obviously I've been married for a while, so I do have a couple single friends and they tell me about their dating experiences, and maybe I was just naive to it like when I was dating, but a lot of the stuff that they talk about now, like that didn't happen 15 years ago, 16 years ago, 17 years ago, right? Like that has been kind of a big one. Beth, we will plan that for sure. So anyways, Traci's going to come on and we're going to kind of talk about that and see what's going on. And then I'll stay on till about probably 9:45-ish. And then I'm going to hop over and do the pod cult with Kelly. He's Kelly Arzenek on here, CalleArzenik. So follow him on TikTok. He's my co-host for the pod cult, which is basically a hard rock and heavy metal podcast, and that's kind of what we're doing. So Traci's on. We'll see what we can get into here with her. And then, as I was saying, guys, while she's loading up, the pod cult will be at 10 o'clock tonight, and then me and Kelly are going to talk about some new music that we found, some bands, some concerts that we're planning on going to. So that'll be that in that realm a little bit later. But Traci, are you with us?
I am, but I don't know why there's no video.
Let's see here. Your volume is a little low, but we can adjust that. And then there should be a little camera button underneath. If you click it, it should hop on. But I mean, you're with us. That's the biggest thing you're here.
Hold on.
Yeah, I'll wait. We got time.
Oh, there we go. I found it.
Awesome. And I know you're not supposed to like drink on these things or whatnot, but have you ever had the Dr. Pepper Zeros? Like, I don't know if you're a fan of, but like these things are incredible.
I like just the regular Coke Zero.
This one's strawberries and cream. It's phenomenal.
You're not supposed to drink like anything?
That's what I hear. I don't know. I'm not on this enough but everybody says you're not supposed to like have any beverages when you're live.
I just cover the label.
I don't know. I just show that it's Dr. Pepper. Hopefully they believe that that's what it is. But nonetheless, how was your day? What'd you do? Anything fun and or exciting?
If you consider laundry exciting.
Hey, it's got to get done, right?
But I have like 20 more loads to do.
All right. I had a busy day. I had 2 meetings that I had pre-scheduled, obviously, but they kind of went conjunction into each other, so it was kind of nice. But it was at Fogo de Chao. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those. It's like the all-you-could-eat Brazilian steakhouses.
Oh,
So
I've been to the one in Vegas. Actually, I don't know if it's called that, but it sounds familiar. I've
yeah,
only
so
been.
it was phenomenal. Like I overate. It was disgusting. Like I didn't eat any breakfast. Obviously, it was the only meal I was going to have today, but like I had kind of indulged, and it was a lot of food, but it was good, and we got a lot accomplished conversation wise and planning for future events. So it was very successful.
I don't think it would be smart for me to make meetings at restaurants.
Yeah.
I just ordered Chipotle on DoorDash right now.
Oh, awesome! I love Chipotle.
I ate pretty healthy today, but then I go and ruin it at night.
Have you seen those secret hack menus at Chipotle? Like the
I
new one?
I haven't seen one in a while, but I know that like because I order on DoorDash or like on the app, like you can never customize anything.
Because the guy did one recently. He's an Asian guy, and he does like all these like food hacks. And he did one at Chipotle, and he asked them to put the cheese on the outside of the burrito and then like grill it, so it made like the cheesy burrito. It looked phenomenal. He was like,
Hello, one.
so
I usually
Sylvia, what's up?
nothing. It's weird weather outside. I forget. You're like what, 4 hours from me?
Yeah, about I think because I'm about it almost 2 hours outside of Chicago.
Oh shit.
So
Well, Chicago is think like 5 or 6 hours from here.
yeah, so I'm southwest of Chicago, so I think I'm closer to you on that aspect of it. But
Well, I
yeah,
forgot.
it's been a weird, like this is the time now, like when we start entering September and October, where you're gonna get like 60-degree days and then you're gonna get 90-degree days, and you're just not gonna know. And then everyone's gonna get sick, and it's gonna be terrible. Like it just comes every year. Like, we expect that, right? You go 80, 80, 90, 90, 50, 65, 65, 90, 45. It's just bizarre, and it's coming.
Well, it was in the
So
80s last week here, and now it's going to be hot again this week. And I was here last year during this time, but it's funny how your memory just doesn't remember because you just remember like the extremes, like when it's really hot and when it's really cold, but you forget like when
right.
it was nice.
Yeah. So generally the consensus that kind of triggers my mind is Halloween's, right? Because some Halloweens are 80 degrees and it's an awesome night, and some Halloweens it snows. Like so it's Halloween is kind of the like standard of when weather breaks. And when I was a kid, obviously I lived in Chicago my entire life, but I remember some Halloweens where I was wearing a sweatshirt, a flannel, and my costume because it was like 35 degrees and it was like sleety, snowy, rainy. And then there were some Halloweens where it was like in the 70s or 80s, and you dressed light because trick or treating was. So it's kind of crazy. But Halloween is always the judgment on where the weather sits. And
I think we're probably you live where it's a little colder, but I think here it would be drastic if it snowed on Halloween because we don't get that colder weather usually till like January.
right. But then again, like Christmas last year was 48 and sunny Christmas Day. There was no snow in sight.
Last year on
So
Christmas here, it was nicer here than it was. I'm sorry, I don't remember. Yeah, last year it was nicer here than it was in California on Christmas.
yeah, yeah, it was awesome. It was like a 50-degree sunny day. Like kids were out playing, and so you get that every once in a while. And same with Thanksgiving. I remember some Thanksgivings it was 65, 70, 75 degrees. It was awesome. And some Thanksgivings it snowed. So it's bizarre. The weather's been kind of
In
crazy. The
California,
shifts have definitely been real, right? Like our winters seem to start later now and go longer. Back in the day, it wasn't uncommon for November, December, January, and February to be cold, and then by March it would kind of ease up. Now you're starting to see the cold come in late January, February, March, and April. So May is when it starts to break because it snowed last year in May.
well, I can handle the snow better than I thought, but it's the tornadoes that I cannot handle.
Yeah, I hate the snow, right? Thank you guys for all the gifts. I appreciate it. I like the Elvis. I don't like the snow anymore. I've had 44 years of snow and I am done. As soon as I retire, I'm out of Illinois. I need warm, I need beaches, I need sun, I need like the snow is just awful. I can't do it
Well,
anymore. I just don't want to do it anymore.
I can leave anytime I want. I'm scared. I'm not scared, but I'm just tired of moving around by myself.
Sure.
But it just kind of sucks because like there's jobs I could be applying for, but I'm like, I just don't want to do it again. Like moving out here by myself was difficult, and it's been a little over a year, and I still don't have any
Yeah.
friends. So it's like, do I want to start all over? Like I have friends, I just don't have friends that I hang out with outside of
Sure.
work.
Right.
So do I want to start all over with, nothing again?
Yeah.
And
No, I get it. It's tough. Like obviously my career is in Illinois and my family's here. I was born and raised in Chicago, but after this, like if I never see snow again, I am happy, right? Like I want warm weather, I want the beach, I want like relaxation. I don't want to deal with the cold. I don't want to like so for me, I've always had it. Like I've never known anything but this harsh, dense, winters. Even in college, I went to school in Wisconsin. It was worse, right? Wisconsin was bitter cold and snow and harsh winters. I'm over that. So for me, it's going to be fun in the sun in retirement. I'm getting out of here.
so you're either going to Florida or the Carolinas, probably. Those are really the
So
only.
my top three are Texas, Alabama, or Florida, and I like yeah the winners in Kenosha, right, Mike? But yeah, but for us, like I just can't deal with it anymore. And not that I don't really have any rhyme or reason for it, but I'm past the cold, right? The bitterness is what I'm done with, and so Texas. The only reason I like that is the property value, right? You can get a very 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 nice house in Texas for relatively low cost. At least now, I don't know what's going to happen in 7 years when I retire, but for now, Texas, the property is the strongest. I like the Gulf Shores of Alabama just because it's kind of like quaint and like cozy. And there's a town in Illinois called St. Charles, which is like a very rustic old town, a lot of antique shops, and the South Shores of Alabama remind me of that. So it's kind of has that like hominess to it. And then my mom's whole side of the family is in Florida, so they're all out by Cocoa Beach, which is Ron John's. If you don't know where that's at, Ron John Surf Shop started in Cocoa Beach, so that's kind of their claim to fame in Florida. But they lived in Rockledge, which was about 6 minutes from the beach. They actually lived on a saltwater river that connected right to the ocean.
I've been to Cocoa Beach, but I did not know about that place when I went, so we did not go there.
Yeah, so Ron John's is the um, I can't think of the one in Venice, the skate shop in Venice. Is that Santa Cruz, like the original, like one of the skate shops? But Ron John's was like the original like surf skate shop in Florida. So whenever you enter the state, you basically see three signs. You see Ron John's, you see Disney, and you see the Everglades. Is pretty much what it is. And if you're a fan of space, Cape Canaveral, that's where all the shuttles launch from. So if you are into NASA and all the shuttles take off from Cape Canaveral, Florida, that's an Air Force base.
Yeah, is that where like the Kennedy Space Force is, or no? That's different. Because I went there.
Yeah, the Space Center's there. The Kennedy Space Center's there. Cape Canaveral is just basically like a giant island that they connected from land to a bridge. And so when you see the shuttle, like when you get binoculars or like a telescope, you see the space shuttle like here on its launch pad, and then you're on land, so you're over here, and then it's an island about 75 miles offshore, and you can see it. And it basically, they start the countdown like at the beach. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You'll see the smoke, and then you see it kind of just launch up. I was at one when I was a kid, and they were gonna launch it. The smoke started, and the shuttle never took off. It just kind of stopped, and like they basically were like, okay, everybody. There was malfunction between one of like the cooling chambers and like something or other, and they said that they're going to try and fix it, and if they fix it they'll launch it, and they never launched it that day, so we left. But it was cool to see, because you're on the beach, everyone's hanging out, and it's just a neat experience to see. So
I think my dad went there as a kid for launches because they're from Ohio. But I actually moved here from California, where I lived. Like I lived at the Space Force base pretty much. Like my job is connected to the Space Force base, like property wise.
okay.
So like you could just walk out your backyard and see all the launches. Like it was pretty awesome.
Oh, nice. Actually, I wrote an article for NASA 2 years ago.
That's
They
cool.
were they were talking about the colonization of space and how they would do it, and they took a bunch of people from every field, and they basically said, okay, we're going to have government officials, we're going to have law enforcement agencies, we're going to have biometrics and teachers, and we all kind of wrote what we thought would happen if we were to colonize another planet. How would you start? Like who would you send? And so, it was like a social science experiment. So from our standpoint, it was like, this is what you would need to do, this is how you would set it up. And then it got really deep into like social economics. So it was like, well, what government are you going to have? Because obviously, we're a democracy, constitutional republic in the United States, but there's communist governments, there's still kings that rule. There's still, so it's like, what do you pick? Like, what government would you want? Because obviously it's a world thing, right? It's just not the United States. So it was like, what are you going to pick, right? What are you going to do? And then when you do it, what are you going to set up? Are you going to set up schools? Are you going to set up churches? Are you going to set up, science departments? So it was just kind of a unique thing. And we all wrote an article, and it ended up being about a 750-page article. And they kind of sent you your snippets of what, you put in. And then obviously at the very back page, I think there was like over 150 people that had given their little like 2 cents worth of like what they would do, and they just kind of gave your name and recognition on it, and it came out like in a press thing for NASA, so it was pretty cool.
That's cool. I never was like super interested in space until I went to the Kennedy Space Force, the Kennedy Space Museum, and
Yeah.
then like living right there, it's pretty cool too. Like, getting to see that. Like, if you go on my Instagram, I have a whole story like real thing, like where you could watch all the launches that I had recorded. But I actually wanted to get a like kind of a cartoon one. I don't know, like a tattoo to like represent when I lived there.
Yeah. Now, was that near San Diego?
No, it's Central Coast, so it's like kind of I would say like the closest main city would be Santa Barbara.
Okay.
So it's like north of LA, like I would say 3 hours, 2.5
Right.
hours.
Okay. I didn't know, because I know there's an Air Force base in Costa Mesa. There's the Navy base in San Diego and Coronado, which is where like the SEALs train. But where all the pilots fly, like where Miramar is, that's in San Diego. So when you go there, you get to see that. And they have like the Blue Angel Museum there, and then they have like the naval thing, and then they got like the it's kind of cheesy, but it says Top Gun. So like it's got like the plane that goes up with the jet, and so it's kind of a neat little thing having that. So it's kind of cool to see it, obviously, like from the movies. And then I always say, my cousin Mickey, I don't know if you can see the pictures behind me, but he was in the Navy, and he used to send me all his squadron patches and stuff like that. So I got them all hanging on the back wall. When he was I think he retired as a lieutenant colonel. So he was like a high ranking guy, but he flew fighter jets for his career.
Yeah, it used to be called Vandenberg Air Force Base, but now it's called Vandenberg Space Force Base.
Okay, cool.
And it's funny to see all the Space Force guys, because majority of the people there are contractors. I would say there's like a small amount of Space Force, and then
Sure.
a little tiny bit of Air Force, but not a lot. They've mostly pulled them out. And then you have like a lot of the veterans, that I was friends with, or that I knew
Yeah.
there. They just make fun of the Space Force guys because they just don't
Well,
look like military.
Yeah, because I mean, most of the space exploration before they created the Space Force was Air Force guys, right? a lot of the Air Force was like nautically involved in NASA. They were just Navy pilots, Marine pilots, Air Force members. And then you said the subcontractor. So, guys that work for, Dunham and Lockheed Martin and all the other ones that are there. So, they're involved in the creation of the crafts and all the other stuff. So they're, the civilians are a big, part of that. So thank you guys for all the gifts. I appreciate it. You don't have to do that, but thank you. Thank you. But yeah, so for the space exploration, you always have people that are kind of, did we make it to the moon? Have we ever gotten outer space? So it's kind of a weird, taboo topic, but I love space and exploration and, the galaxies and the cosmoses. So I'm intrigued by it anyways.
I think that's when my dad went to Florida, was when they supposedly went to the moon.
Yeah.
If you bring that up in front of him, he'll be like, well, I was there, like.
Yeah, no, sure. And, and it's just different because you get your Buzz Aldrins and, their stories and, everyone picks them apart and, says, were we really there? And then, he said, we never made it. We never went. It was just a hoax. And so I don't know. I like to believe that we did get there eventually, even if it wasn't in 69, if we made it in 71 or 74, with the lunar landing, like, maybe we didn't make it at first. Maybe it was filmed in a studio, but I'd like to think that we got there eventually, right?
It's crazy because you don't hear about it too much. Like, that was 55 years ago. You'd think that you'd hear about more since then.
Yeah. I mean, again, we got in trouble for talking about this a few weeks ago, but we were talking about the firmament and people believe flat Earth, right? Like, that's a real thing. So
why did you get in trouble for that?
I don't know. They said that we were talking about topics that were not like fact verified or something like that. There was like 7 or 8 of us. We were all on my live, and I got in trouble because it said that we were stating stuff that couldn't be verified by like a meta fact thing type of thing. And because I was the host, I got the biggest time served to me, which was 5 days with no interaction at all. I couldn't get on anybody's live. I couldn't join anybody. I couldn't go live. All my stuff was get suppressed. I couldn't post anything. So it was really like tough. So we kind of joked about it now, a couple of weeks later, we're like, well, we got to watch what we say now. But like, we were talking about like this kind of stuff, right? Like, space exploration and things like that. And then we mentioned like flat Earth, and, there's a big, large number of the population that believe that the Earth is flat, that we don't live on a sphere at all. And so it's kind of like, we don't know, right? And that was always my argument. Like, I didn't say this is fact, we live on a flat Earth. We were just having a discussion about it, and we were talking about it. And I brought up the Buzz Aldrin interview that he did in the mid 80s, and they asked him, like, tell us about space, tell us about your experience with it, with the moon landing and everything. And he's like, I don't know, we never made it, we never went to the moon.
How about those people that are stuck in space right now?
So I think now we've made it, right? Like, I think in 1969 it was a space race, right? We were in the middle of the Cold War. We were it was us versus China versus Russia, and it was kind of like a space race. Who could get there first? Who could? So I think we kind of maybe fabricated us getting there. I honestly think that, just to kind of scare Russia and the China and saying, hey, we did it, right? We were the first ones to do it. You guys could be number 2 and number 3. Because obviously there's Russian satellites out there. There's Chinese satellites out there. We saw that with the balloon that, crossed the country a year and a half ago, that they couldn't trace that. That was satellite depicted from outer space, right? Like, that was in our atmosphere, in our solar system. So they were transmitting signals to space. So we know they're out there now, right? Like, I don't think there's any thought that we are not exploring space at the very moment. But did we do it in 1969? Probably not. Honestly, I think that we probably got there like mid to late 70s, early 80s. Like when Reagan was president, we were doing heavy space exploration. I think that was about the time when we actually had craft that could make it to and from the moon, or at least outer space enough to say, okay, we've crossed the atmosphere, we are now in space. And I think that probably happened around late 70s, early 80s. I don't think it happened in 69. I think that was just kind of a facade to show the world that, hey, we were the first ones to do it. But I don't think we ever made it. I don't think, not until at least a decade later.
Those people that are stuck up there, do you think that they have enough food?
So I, are there, is that a Russian team that's up there, or is that, do you know who's up there right now? Because that happened to the Russians, right? When they did the Sputnik, remember they got lost in space. They couldn't get them. They had to find, like, they sent out another thing to do it, and then we had that disaster in the mid 2000s when we sent our team to fix the satellite, right? And they got stuck on the satellite. They couldn't get off of it. They didn't know how to like. So I think there's a way that they can like sense people to get them back, but I don't know. I think food rations probably for 90 days. So because most of the time when they go to outer space, it's usually for like 30 or 40 days. It's not a whole, like they don't do it for like 6-7 months at a time anymore. They do it for a very short time now. So I would imagine they probably have food ration for at least 90 days or 120 days. And they plan for maybe like 30 or 40 days. So I don't know what day they are now.
They're from the U.S., but they're trying to send other countries, or they're gonna have to send somebody else to go basically bail us out because somebody needs to go up there and either I don't know how they do it, if they'll just fix whatever's wrong, or but
Because
they
that's
were
what they,
supposed to come back in like July, and they're not gonna get back for a long time.
yeah, because that's what happened to us when we were fixing the when we were trying to fix our satellite. They always talk about it on the Big Bang Theory, on that TV show when they sent those astronauts to fix the satellite and they got stuck out there and they couldn't get back and it took them like 3 weeks longer. They were down to their like last day of food and everything, so they made it back. But if they would have gotten stuck any longer, that it might have been a disaster. But I'm sure they'll send somebody to tether them to get them back. I would imagine they could do it.
Well, they were supposed to come back already, even like it was supposed to be like a month later, and then they keep extending it. So I don't know if they can just send people up there to give them food, but you'd think like if they can do that, they could actually retrieve them, you know?
Right. Well, what are they up there for? Are they trying to fix something, or are they trying to? Because sometimes it takes a while and you can't, like.
I don't know, but
I
it
don't
is
know.
a male and a female, just two of them. I don't know what they were doing in the first place, but I just know that it was something mechanical that.
Oh, I'm gonna look into it now after this and see.
If I had my laptop over here, I could look it up, but.
But yeah, so it's just kind of cool though. That's always been like an interest of mine is space exploration and then like I don't want to say they're conspiracy theories because they're not, right? There's factual basis behind it. But like I like reading into that stuff, like what's going on in Antarctica and what's going on, in the US. And are you familiar with Stephen Greer at all, Dr. Greer?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so he basically worked for the government for like 30 years. He's still a government contractor, but he's been in those deep, dark underground bunkers that deal with space exploration and aliens and all that stuff. And he talks about it pretty candidly. He was a guest on the Sean Ryan show a couple months ago, and they were talking about aliens and how he's seen them. He's seen sketches of their bodies. He's seen photographic evidence that they exist. And he said that a lot of the stuff that we have now is we've replicated craft that had been down. So he says all the UFOs that you see or people spot going from like 0 to 1,000 miles an hour and basically transitioning in our orbit, going from nothingness to like, being seen and then leaving. He goes, that's all American made stuff. We've replicated what we've seen. He goes, those are US craft. They're foreign because people haven't seen them. So they are UFOs, but there are UFOs. We've made them. The United States has created them. So it's just cool to see that, like, they obviously know what's been out there in the technology. And then you got guys like Billy Carson who talk about aliens that have basically been around for 400, 500,000 years.
I always say
And
with
he's
aliens,
got the,
I'll believe it when I see it.
and he follows those emerald text that like predate the Sumerian scriptures, which predate our modern Bible and all our modern religion by thousands of years. I think the Sumerian text is about 2,000 years prior to the Egyptians and the hieroglyphics, and the emerald text are predate them by about 6,000 years. So you're talking almost 10,000 years prior of people documenting gods and aliens, spaceships and things like that, that like were actually like tablet written. So he's very interesting too, like to talk about that kind of stuff because, you know, obviously if you are religious and you believe in the Bible, you know, his stuff kind of talks about context of stories before the Bible. And he says the Bible's basically plagiarized, right? Like they have had these stories hundreds, if not thousands of years earlier that they're just retold. So it's interesting. I find it, you know, appealing, and it doesn't change my faith, right? Like I'm Catholic. I believe, you know, in the Bible and the scriptures and all that stuff. But it's just interesting, and it kind of opens your mind to at least the process of what was out there before, right? Like, you know, Jesus is zero, so we know the Egyptians are about 5,000 BC. The Sumerians are about 8,000 BC, and these emerald texts from the Anunnaki and all the ones prior to that, they're at least 15,000 BC. So they were writing these texts long before the Bible and Jesus was ever a thing. So it's just cool to like see, right? Everybody has their beliefs and you can't change anything. And I always joke around that when I do my podcast, it's the only two things I don't talk about are government and politics, right? Because or politics and religion, right? Because you're not going to change anybody's mind or opinion in a short amount of time. But at least I'm open to hearing other viewpoints and other stances. So that stuff intrigues me. Like space exploration intrigues me. Billy Carson stuff intrigues me. Drew stuff intrigues me. There was another scientist.
I think that's where it trips me up because I'm also Catholic, but like, where does aliens come into religion? And I've never heard a priest or anybody talk about, you know, what our stance is on that. So I just always say I'll believe it when I pretty much.
Right. And so it's kind of a unique perspective because it's one of the things, right? When we die, we're going to know the secrets of the universe, right? Like they're going to unfold to us. So you'll know what is actually real and what's not, right? You'll figure that out. And like I said, Billy Carson, if you Google him and his studies, he deals and talks about all these precursors. So he talks about Amun Ra, which is why you say amen after a prayer, because he was the one that said that. He wanted to be worshipped like a god. So Amun Ra said, you say my name after you say a prayer, and that became amen. That translated to him. So, and they said he was a very evil, you know, ruler that, you know, wanted to do a lot of bad in the world. And then there's the theory that I was actually talking to a friend about it today, that we are living like heaven is here, like we're in heaven right now. And that's their philosophy, because when you die, our bodies are only a shell, right? We have energy, and we know from science that energy gets transferred. It doesn't disappear. So when we pass on, our physical bodies are not here, but our energy transfers. Where it goes, that's the great mystery. We don't know, but it's just interesting to get a perspective on what we think is norm and what we've been taught in school for the last however many years versus stuff now that like they wouldn't teach us this in school, right? Like you wouldn't know who these people were until you like kind of go down that rabbit hole and find them, what like is what I did. So it opened, like I said, I have my faith, I have my beliefs. Obviously, I believe in Jesus, I believe in a God, I believe in all that. But it's just an interesting perspective when they tell you, you know, hey, just so you know, Catholics, I hate to burst your bubble, but this is not how it goes. These stories are taken from the Sumerian text, and this is your modern Bible, are direct stories from these texts. Like, so your God didn't write your Bible, right? So it's hard to wrap your head around, because that's all I believed for 40 years of my life. So it's a unique perspective, you know, and then when you talk about, you know, science, right? Like Nikola Tesla, his work basically figured out time travel, right? Like he said, this is the way to do it. This is how you create a portal. This is how you travel. This is how you find different dimensions. This is what you do. And his work directly talks right to what the Egyptians were talking about in their stuff, having the energy to move giant buildings and bricks and stuff with sound waves, right? That if you create sound and you harness it, you can move any object. And he said that's how they explained the pyramids being built, was basically levitation, that they created these sound waves. So like when you put a very low frequency through your speaker and you start to see the paper clips jump on your table and the pens and pencils start jumping and moving around because of the low frequency sound, he said they were able to harness that, and that's how they moved these giant stones, was they found the frequency and the stones were able to move and people were just basically able to push them. 15, 16-ton stones, because they created sound waves and they were basically bouncing off the ground and people were just guiding them. So it's interesting to get science perspective on something that you don't know may or may not exist. And it's the same kind of concept with Antarctica, right? Like, why are we not allowed to go there? And people have documented and said that there's a whole other world on the other side of the Arctic, that if we get lost over there, it's basically a newer world that's better than Earth. It mirrors us.
At all?
You're not allowed to go if any planes or space travel or go over there. They basically are like, they give the sign that they're going to get shot down, so they can't go. There's been a couple people in the 70s. Yeah, there's been a couple people that have done exploration. I forgot the guy's name. I was just listening to a story the other day. It was like 1780, and his boat got lost by the Arctic, and he came across the world. And they told him, if you want to stay here, you're welcome, but you can't go back to what you know as Earth. And he's like, well, my family's there, my wife, my kids, everything I know. They're like, this is your one chance. If you want to go back, you go back. If you want to stay here, you stay here. And I guess he stayed there, and he documented that.
So who can go there? Just like government people?
Nobody, supposedly. It's very, very weird, but they said that the person who had the most interest in Antarctica was Hitler, that he knew what was down there, that he saw what was there. Now, people have said that it's evil, that there's something there. A lot of people think it's another world, like that's the portal to get to other worlds. People believe that it might be Atlantis, that there's a world underneath our ocean, that they were able to dig down deep enough to go underneath the core of the Earth. And they say that's probably where Atlantis is. There's pyramids there. They say that the Arctic, before the polar shift and the plate shifted, was actually an oasis. So it would have been like Hawaii, where it would have been warm weather, palm trees, beaches. And when the polar shift happened during the Ice Age, it basically turned it into what we know as the Arctic Circle. But they said prior to that, it was a tropic. So it's a
I don't know how
perspective. Yeah, I'll send you all the links to the stuff that and kind of go. But once you go down that rabbit hole, it's kind of hard to, kind of rationalize, because you're listening to people's stories, you're listening to documentation. A lot of it is opinion, right? People are like, what's down there? And then obviously they say if you Google Earth it, it takes you and you can actually see there's like a bunch of flags for all the nations. So everyone has their piece of it, and they're all working together. The Rockefeller Foundation is there, and people are like, why would their foundation be in the Arctic, right? Like, what's down there? They're obviously the richest family in the world. So why do they have interest down there? And people are saying that it's the gateway or the portal to another universe.
I always say that men are always more into history than women, because like every guy I ever meet is like a history major.
And I'm recent to this, right? Like, I didn't know any of this stuff. Like, I just, like I said, once I started watching Sean Ryan, that's how I got into podcasting. And when he started out his show, he would talk to all his Navy SEAL buddies. It was like two people having a conversation about war stories, right? He'd have all his Navy SEAL friends on. He'd have all the teams guys on, all the JSOC guys, all the MARISOC guys, all the special operations guys, so Delta, the Air Force paratroopers. And then as he started evolving his show and he started picking up steam, I think now he's got like almost 2.5 million subscribers on YouTube. But he started interviewing like politicians and then scientists. And so he kind of went away from, all right, I'm just going to, interview all my Navy SEAL friends and all my Army Ranger friends. And now I'm actually going to talk to like people. So that's how I found out about Billy Carson. And that's how I found out about Stephen Greer, was through Sean Ryan. I didn't know any of that before that. So before watching his show in 2021, I had no idea who these people were. And it interested me enough to where I could say, okay, well, I don't know who Stephen Greer is, so I'm going to Google him. So after watching the 4.5 hour interview that he did with him, I started going into all his work. And he was talking about Lockheed Martin and Skunk Works and all these other military contractors that basically replicate UFOs. And it's our government building them from scratch, saying, okay, let's use their technology and how do they maneuver? How do they use magnetic fields? How do they use space? How do they use gravity to help them? And so I started reading into him. And then when he had Billy Carson on, he was another one. He was like, I'm not knocking religion. He's like, I'm not knocking Catholics and Muslims and Jews and Buddhists and anybody of any religion around the world. But he's like, all our modern religions are all made up based on the ancient Sumerian text and the ancient Emerald tablets. He goes from the 10 Commandments to Law and Order. He goes, the Bible is completely scripted by a human being that wrote it. He basically took the cliff notes from the Sumerian text and created the modern day Bible. And he says a lot of the stuff that they talk about in the Bible has been added on in the 1700s, 1800s, early 1900s. He says there was no, we look at Revelation in the Bible, about the end of times and the end of the world. That was not originally ever in any of those texts. That was some guy added that on. He just took a bunch of stories and said, okay, this is what's going to happen. So he's like, and he tells you, he's like, I hate to burst your bubble, but he's like, all of these are basically stolen stories from the Sumerians about how we got here and how we were created and how DNA strands are changed. And he talks about the Anunnaki, and he talks about all these ancient civilizations that coded our DNA to what we are now, why we went from 48 to 46 chromosomes. And he explains how Jesus was born through a chromosome, that his lineage of his family, Mary's mom, and her mom, all were born of virgin births. None of them were inseminated by a man. So when you look at Jesus's family history, all of his siblings were all born of virgin births. He wasn't the only one. So it's just, and they talk about that, right? Like they talk about that in the text. They talk about that in the stories. They kind of go into that. And again, I'm Catholic. I was born and raised. I was, from an infant. I went to Catholic grammar school, Catholic high school, a private college. So I've been around religion my entire life. But now I'm just starting to like open my mind to the possibilities, right? I still believe in Jesus. I still believe in God. I still go to church. I still pray. I still do all that. But I'm also open to the idea of, hey, maybe through the years in history, that maybe the Bible isn't the word of God. It's just kind of there, right? So I'm open to that possibility. I don't know. I still pray. I still believe, but I just kind of expand my mind. And then, I was listening to the the heaven on earth theory, right? And that was kind of like the most eye-opening thing, because they were like, you don't die and go to heaven. This is heaven. Like we are in heaven now. Like we have our bodies here. This is heaven. Like this is what we know to be. When this life ends, your energy shifts into either a different body, a different life form, a different, space and time. We don't know that, but we are basically living in heaven. This is heaven. We are here now, right? We were created in the image of God, and this is heaven. Like we are here now. So it's an interesting spin on it, right? Like, because we always taught when you die, you go to heaven and that's your eternity. And their theory is you're alive now. You're alive here. You're a conscious thought. You open your mind to expand. You try to get as much knowledge as you can. You try to gain as much wisdom as you can. You try to make the best life for yourself. And this is our heaven. So
I feel like you're very rare. I can never find. besides the other day and like here and there, I rarely meet Catholic people here in the Midwest.
Yeah. And I'm open, right? Like I said, I've taken all the sacraments. I've gone to church. Obviously, religion's been a big part of my life just because of my environment growing up in the city. All the public schools were riddled with gangs when I was a kid. So my parents were like, "You're not going to public school because it was just too dangerous." So they had no choice but to send me to Catholic school. So my mom worked. My dad had two jobs. They did everything they could to make sure that I got the best education possible, and it paid off. I went to college, I got a scholarship and stuff, and it worked out for me. But now, I just turned 44. So according to all statistics, my life is halfway over, right? Most men, I think that life expectancy is 83 now. So it's like, so I realize like I have maybe 40 years left at this point. So I'm kind of, into the mode of, realizing what is real, what are we being told, why are we being lied to, why are we being so, you know I'm just at this point now where it's kind of like I'm opening my mind to the idea that there is maybe something else going on, and I just hope that I make the most sound decisions I can to inform myself of what else is out there in the world and what other possibilities are you know So, and it's just like any other religion, right? Like the Buddhist in Tibet, they spend their whole lives trying to find enlightenment, right? They live very calm and peaceful lives. They don't work. They pray all the time. They try to be the best people they can be. They try to, but are you being robbed of your life because you're not able to do the things that you want to do because you're trying to do what you're told by your family members is to be the right thing and the conscientious thing. So it might be a prosperous life to them, but like to not be able to travel, to not know the all is prayer and your body and your ability to learn what you're being taught, which is phenomenal, right? It's a cool thing. But I couldn't imagine not traveling, seeing the world, talking to people, engaging in conversations. Like that's what I find to be life, right? Meeting new people, hearing different stories, backgrounds. That's what I enjoy, right? Like, talking to you, getting to know you, right, is awesome. So, and everybody else I've met on here. So it's, to me, that's what like living is, right? Like engaging in conversation, being open-minded. Not everybody's going to have the same viewpoints as you. Not everyone's going to have the same political ideology as you, but at least to have a civil conversation about it where we just don't start yelling and screaming and swearing at people and blocking them, right? Like have an open conversation and be honest. And, I respect everybody's, ideologies, right? I don't bash anybody, for being a Democrat or a Republican or being, a Catholic or a Muslim. Like, let's talk about it though. Like, tell me your viewpoints. I'll tell you mine. We'll come to a common ground and we be civil about it and gain a friendship, right? Like I don't not want to be friends with somebody because they're, a different race than me or a different creed or a different political, like, but that's where our society has brought us to, right? It's like, it's pure like hatred, right? If somebody doesn't align with you, you just don't talk to them. Like you block them out. And like, why have we come to that? Like, why does that happen? What happened to having a civil conversation and like, sharing your ideas with people, right? And saying, hey, this is what I believe. What do you believe? Why do you believe it? Like, tell me, like, let me understand your background, and that's kind of, the thing that we've just kind of gotten away from.
Yeah,
So,
definitely these days. I feel like I have friends from like all walks of life, but like most of them are because I work for the government. So like you tend to have, people from every religion, political party, race, whatever.
sure.
And although we are good friends and I don't care about any of that, I feel like on their end, they're probably only friends with me because they got to know me without knowing my beliefs and they already liked me. So then when all this stuff, started to change more recently the past few years where people aren't getting along, they're kind of stuck with me because, they already liked me prior. But I
But
definitely
that's
feel
the
like
way it should be, right? They liked you for you. They didn't like your ideology, right? They liked you as a person. They befriended you as a person. So that should be the common ground, right? You should be friends with somebody because they're nice to you. You have a conversation, you get to know each other, and then you learn things about each other, right? But because because you might not align with them religiously or politically, the world now is so easy just to pull the plug and say, okay, we're not friends anymore because you believe that, or you like that person and I don't like that person. Like, how did we come to that point? Like, when I was a kid, you could like different things, you could acknowledge different things, you could believe in different things, and you liked the person as a genuine person. It didn't matter what they believed, right? It didn't matter what they were into. They liked you for you. And we've kind of gotten away from that recently very, very badly, right? Like, what happened to that? What happened to, you are a nice person, I'm a nice person, we get along. Yeah, we might not have to align politically or religiously or our ideology or our family situation, right? But we got along with each other in the first place. We were friends before all that. So why does that matter? But it does now. It absolutely matters. And people are afraid to say what they believe, right? They don't want to say what their opinion is for thoughts of being, disconnected or being shut down or being, obliterated in the comments and stuff like that. And it's like, why? How did we get to that point? Because I said something you don't agree with doesn't mean that you get to call me every name under the sun. Like, just say, I'm sorry, I don't agree with you and move on, or just keep scrolling. You don't have to stop on me, right? You don't have to make it a point to call me names or tell me I'm an idiot or I'm stupid or I should, pull my head out of my butt because I said something. Like, I have an opinion, I should have that, right? But we've gotten our society now does not approve of that, right? It's like, you have to watch what you say, you can't say what you feel, you can't, and it's like, why? We're all people, right? We're all brothers and sisters on this earth, right? Like, why do we have these hatred feelings? And it automatically goes to hate, right? It's hard to find love between two people, right? Like a genuine friendship. Most of it is just based on, like you said, getting to know somebody, right? Like, that's what you want to do. You want to get to know somebody. You like them for being that person. And it's this, we've come a long way from that. It's sad almost, but.
Well, I think the internet just does that in general. It's not even for religion, because even my, theme of my TikTok is like, I can't post anything without, and it's usually men, but I can't post anything without a man, commenting on there, well, this is why you're single, or this is, because like, unless you're in my shoes or unless you're single, which a lot of people that are commenting on, they just think that you're crazy, or it's like you can't really win no matter what the topic is. The internet has allowed for people to hide behind their screens, and that's just.
There's actually a really funny person that I am friends with now, and we get along very well. But her TikTok handle is "Sit Down, Be Quiet," and she's single too, and she screenshots the DMs of guys that send her like these obscure, obnoxious messages and calls them out on it. It's great. I find her content to be amusing. I've told her 1,000 times, I'm like, you have to, start. She's like, I feel bad because I don't want to like screenshot like the person's name. I'm like, but that's what makes it funny, right? If a guy's going to be rude and obnoxious and ignorant, like, call him out on it, right? Like, if the guy gives you a thumbs up or says, hey, I think you look good or whatever, like, you let that go, right? But when somebody hits your DMs and says, this is the reason that I don't like you, because you're this, and like, that's like ballsy, right? Like, you shouldn't tell somebody that, right? Why would you take the time out of your day to sit down and write 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes worth of text and send it to somebody when all you could do is just scroll on, right? Like, and she makes it a point to like start putting these people on blast, because nobody deserves that, right? Like, you should not wake up to messages in your DMs telling you why you're not finding a guy, right? That's none of your business, right? That's none of their business. That's not, if you want to put it out there, right? Like, I went on a date and it didn't work out because of this, this, and this, and you joke around about it and you make humor out of it, that's fine. But like, people just, they get caught up in too much stuff, right? And it's like, and I post all my videos and I see it on YouTube, right? People really like, the comment section in YouTube is insane. But people like write their opinions about something, and I respect that, but it's like, dude, you took the time to sit down, articulate this thought, type it out, and then send it to me. Like, if I'm not worth your time and you don't like my stuff, why would you take this amount of time to tell me you don't like me? Right? It's counterproductive. It seems like you could just, make it a red X and send it my way. I get the message, right? You don't like what I'm saying, or you don't agree with what I'm saying. I get it. But to have somebody take their time to basically articulate all this meanness and negativity and then send it to you, It's like, why? I don't get it.
Well, usually it's on the actual video, which is funny because like you don't like my content or you don't like me, but you're boosting my video by posting that. So
Yeah,
I never post anything negative on videos because I don't want. Well, for one, that's just not me. But two,
sure.
why if you don't like someone? Why would you want to boost their video by commenting, liking, or doing any of those things? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's completely obnoxious. And again, I think that's where most people, especially like channels like yours, where where you openly talk about dating and guys and stuff like that. I think there's a lot more people, I think, in your situation than you realize. For all the people who are married and have families and they talk about their marriage and their families and stuff, there are just that many people that like can't seem to find the right person that's a fit for them. And you've taken the approach is obviously not to settle, right? Like you want to find somebody that you have the connection with and you are willing to wait to do that. And I think a lot of people are in your shoes in that same position. Like, I think a lot of people just kind of settled, right? Like they're like, oh, well, I've been on 100 dates and this was the best guy out of all of those dates. So maybe I'll give him another chance. And it's like, but if you didn't find the connection with him the first time, and you're going to give them a second chance, like that's a red flag, right? Like you wouldn't normally do that, but that's the kind of situation. And so Sit Down, Be Quiet talks a lot about that. So it's just kind of an interesting perspective because obviously I haven't dated in 20 years, so I don't know what the scene is like now. But watching your stuff and watching her stuff, it's like, it seems to be kind of bizarre, right? Like it's a crazy time.
It is, and I wish I would have had TikTok back like 3-4 years ago because I was dating a lot more frequently and dealing with a lot more funny / entertaining situations because I was like actively always dating. Where the past maybe 2 years, I've been in a lot of relationships that weren't very long, but I've more like settled down. Especially since moving out here, there's not a lot of options. In California, there's millions of more people than in Southern Illinois, so like there's not a lot of options out here. And for the most part, I have kind of just stuck with like the same consistent guys, or even if we weren't together, but I do bring up stories from back then. But sometimes I get like scared because I don't know why, but like every guy I've ever talked to, dated, was with, like they all follow me on every social media. It's like I don't follow them back. I deleted them or unfollowed once we stopped talking, but like I just need to grow the balls, to like talk about them knowing that they're going to see the video, and that's hard. Because I feel like
and it's tough because you put yourself out there, right? Like this modern world of social media that we're in, right? There's either two ways to go about it. You either are anti and you're against it and you have a page and you are very secretive and you're very hard to find and you don't want people to find you, or you just embrace it like I did. And I was like, fine, this is who I am. Here's my stuff. This is my links. Find me here. So I think it's one of those type of things, right? You either want to be all in and focus on your social media and growing you, because I look at it as like a journal, right? Like for me, social media is like a journal of from January of this year when I started my podcast to where I am now. Everything I do, I post on YouTube. So all my mistakes, all my mishaps, all my lives, everything I do goes straight to YouTube, right? So I use it as like a journal. I can look back at my first couple of videos and be like, wow, that was really bad, right? Like I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have used that language. I shouldn't have talked like that. And now over time, like getting to know the technology that you're in front of, right? Like I use my iPad now instead of my phone. I used to use my phone all the time. The iPad is bigger. I could see the comments more. It's a much better arena to be in. I have my laptop here, so I do all my editing of my videos when I'm sitting here. And when I go live on TikTok, normally it's when I'm just editing my videos for YouTube. I'll come on here and, I open the screen, they can't see the top of it. And I just kind of talk to everybody as my video's loading and tell them what my podcast was about or who I talk to and kind of stuff. And that's kind of how I've grown outside of it. It's like a behind the scenes look of what I do when I'm editing my videos. I'm just basically being me again, as opposed to being the, proper, conversationalist kind of journalist when I'm doing my podcast, asking questions and having a conversation. For like this, we're just kind of, shooting the shit, right? We're just kind of, there's no specific thing we were going to talk about. We just kind of came on and see where it went. And this is kind of how I, do my podcast for basically better or worse. It's just the podcast, I do have notations of what I'm going to talk about, right? So like I'll do this like you just mentioned, like I'll go to my person that I'm going to have on their social media website. I'll have a conversation with them. You know, I'll learn obviously what their interests are, if they're doing, you know, like my last podcast, I had a writer on, she writes comic books. So that was a very like interesting realm of, you know, how she does all that type of thing versus if I have a sports guy on or I have a musician on. So there's different things to talk about, you know, but generally I just kind of, you know, do this. So it's unique, but it's like a journal for me. So I've opened my life up to pretty much everybody, and now anybody can find me. If you Google One Fun Guy, all my stuff pops up. So
Yeah, I look back at my old videos because I've had like two different TikTok eras. I had like the beginning era, then I like went off TikTok where I didn't post anything for like a really long time. And then like you could see a significant difference because for one, I was way heavier. Two, my camera was horrible on my old phone. And then three, I
mhm.
used to just like talk a bunch of crap about my ex-boyfriend. And that's all it was about. And then
Right.
when I decided to keep doing TikTok, it was this past, I would say like February. And I think about it because I'm like, okay, well, my theme is dating, but what happens one day when I'm not single? Am I gonna still be able to carry on with this niche if I don't have that same topic anymore? Or do I just have to
Yeah.
completely hide my real life to just continue the topic because that won't actually be things that are relevant to me anymore?
Yeah, but see, the thing is that like you're kind of in a cool spot because you are dating humor, right? So if you found a guy and you started a relationship with him, you would take us on your dates, right? Like say, hey, I'm here with my boyfriend John, and we're at this new restaurant. We're trying this out. We'll let you know how the food is. We'll let you know how the ambiance is, and then you can do stuff like that. Like you could take us on your dates, as long as like he's comfortable with it, right? But like you
That's
have the
hard.
dating humor, so like once you find somebody and you actually start dating, well, you're still dating humor, right? So you could talk about the quirks or like, you know, we were going to go do this and plans got canceled or whatever. You could talk about your dating life. We're still into that. So like, and that's been the weird thing with like with me and my wife, right? Because she has her channels completely separate, business focused, clothing focused, boutique focused, where my podcast is all about conversation, right? So we kind of have that weird thing where like we don't want to cross our worlds, right? Like because I don't want to talk about clothing or a boutique but I don't mind talking about being a business owner, right? And everything we've done towards the business. So I can talk about that, but like I don't know anything about the clothes or the purses or the bags or the jewelry or anything like that. So we kind of keep our worlds separate. But when we do things together, we obviously tag each other and we want to see each other succeed and we want the best for each other and we want, all that stuff to happen. But at the same time, like we keep our accounts like separate. Like she does her thing, I do my thing, and we kind of realize that. And then when there's a time and place for us to kind of merge together, then we do it. But for the most part, we're completely separate. So, I'm on one side of the basement, she's on the other side with her boutique. And when I'm live, she kind of leaves me be. And when she's live, I leave her be. So we kind of have this like unique thing, but like we don't really do anything together, right? Because her thing is selling and clothing and boutique and all the other stuff that goes along with it. And mine is podcasting. So they're two separate worlds.
Yeah, I think it's hard to find guys. The older the guy, I think it's harder to get them to understand TikTok because, like, I was
Right.
talking to, I guess friends with benefits situationship type thing the past 4 months, and he had a TikTok due to his kids, but he didn't ever look at my TikTok or he didn't ever like, I guess, quote unquote, support my page,
Mm-hmm.
and he would have never been okay with being in any of my TikToks or and because we work together and because everybody from work likes to stalk my TikTok, even though they don't follow me, like I had to make sure never to talk about him because anything I post, they're going to
Right.
automatically think it's about him because they know
Yeah,
about
the
it.
consequences. Yeah, and boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
kind of hard because I'm like dating and I'm like, okay, I know you don't know me and you don't know if you can trust me, but like just know that what I'm posting on my TikTok is about things from the past and don't think that just because I post something about a guy doesn't mean that I'm actively
Right.
talking to other men because it's a hard
Sure.
thing to probably I would assume, you'd get jealous or it's a hard thing to understand if you're coming in to a stranger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
for sure. And it's difficult, right? Because like I said, you're putting yourself out there, right? So people at work obviously are going to come across your page, right? And I'm in the same boat, right? Like everybody at work, they're like, hey, one fun guy. And I was like, all right, I get it, right? But it's like, but in order for me to succeed, I relied on them. I'm like, well, if you're watching my stuff and you're liking it, share my stuff out then, right? Promote me if we're gonna do this, right? And you're gonna kind of like, not, I won't say poke fun, because at first they were like doing it, right? They're like, what, why would you do this? Like, why would you? And I'm like, because it's something I've always wanted to do, right? It's something that was always in the back of my mind and I just went for it. But now they're like all the people at work, like they know what I do and they kind of embrace it. And now they just kind of leave it be. Like they're like, oh, how's the podcast going? Oh, it's great. Thanks. And so I think when you start doing stuff and you're in front of a camera, right? And you're putting it out there basically for the world to see, because let's face it, TikTok is worldwide, right? So you are going to come across to some people as this is not my cup of tea, right? So some people might find you attractive. Some people might find you not their cup of tea, right? And so we understand that. And that's what I always say, right? I'm like, you may not like me or what I talk about, but if you're going to do anything, just keep scrolling, right? It takes literally 4 seconds to swipe up to the next one. You don't have to stop on my page and be insulting and demeaning, and like that aggravates me. So I used to come on and say on TikTok all the time, I'm like, if you're going to hop in my live, this is going to be a positive live. I don't want any negativity. If you do, I'm going to ban you. And I was like, well, why would I say that, right? Because at least, even if they don't like me, they took the time to stop on my page, right? So they might think that I'm not their cup of tea. I'm not the best looking guy in the world. I'm not, whatever. But as we have a conversation, I'm cool with that, right? But that's what annoys me, like when girls go live, especially girls, right? Because all the guys hop in and make all the rude comments. And it's like, why? If you're not going to be productive and you're not going to say something nice, or you're not going to ask a real question, why would you bother somebody else's life with negativity? Because you're basically a keyboard gangster and it makes you feel good about yourself. Like, I hate that, right? And that's like my biggest pet peeve. So I always try to go in people's lives, especially my friends, and be positive, right? Like ask them how their day was. What do you got planned for the week? What did you do? Like, and so at least where the conversation can flow naturally, right? Because you're typing obviously and we're live. So it's not an interactive thing unless we're together. But I mean, for the most part, like just be uplifting, right? Like be supportive, like tell people about, you and what you're doing and promote the positivity, right? To me, that's what, and it always aggravates me when I hop in somebody's live and you just start seeing the rash of negativity. And it's like, why? Like, I don't understand it. And I'm sure you probably see it a lot more than I do, because most of the people that hop on my live are like friends of mine that like actually support me. Like I don't kind of get the randoms now like I did before. Like I actually get like 6 or 7 people on, but they're all like friends of mine that like want to see me do well.
see, I don't have a lot of personal friends on TikTok. I have a lot of friends like you that I've met from TikTok, but I don't have a lot of friends that I know in real life on TikTok, because most of my friends don't have TikTok, or if they do, they just like don't ever even use it, or it's rare. On Friday night, I had a friend
Hey Bob, I see you guys on.
jump in my live from back home, and that was nice, because typically, he's a friend that I used to just drink with, and that's what we were both doing. And even though I didn't have a lot of people on, like, it's better than just talking to myself. I haven't got that
Absolutely.
down yet, but it's hard to, I don't know, it's hard, like, I would say that, like, even like the talking videos where I'm actually on the video talking and not editing it and all that, like I'm still kind of getting used to that, because my TikTok kind of just started out with just pictures. But as far as work goes, I just have a bunch of people who want to be creeps, well, men, because at work, I don't know if you know what I do for work, but I'm very covered up. I don't wear makeup, like, so I'm a completely different looking person outside. So they're just, wanting to be pervs, but they're not there to support, or they're not trying to follow me. They're probably mostly married and mostly like, just doing it to talk about me. But, that's what happens when, you have a public profile, because my Facebook isn't public. So my Instagram and my TikTok, but they're just trying to be nosy because it's like a high school, literally. Like it's like being in high school. The rumors they want to talk about the women because there's not a lot of us, and I hear from my friends at work, that they talk about my TikTok and they're like, oh, I bet you she has an OF and like all this stuff. It's like, no, I don't. I'm just a normal person. Like,
Yeah.
it's like just because I'm a supervisor too. So it's like when you're a kid and you don't think that your teacher has a life outside of there, and you expect them to be like a nun, and then you realize that they actually like do normal adult things.
Right.
It's kind of like that.
Yeah. And it's funny. So I'll touch on two things, right? So I know you mentioned it before. Like I would say 85% of the people that are friends on here are TikTok friends. And I would say 15% of the people are like real friends that I've met or that I've had conversations with outside of TikTok. So of the majority of the people that are friends with me here, I've met on TikTok. So like Mike, when he was on earlier, my buddy Mike, I went to college with Mike. So he's a real friend, right? But like I would call you a friend, even though we've never met in person. We've talked a bunch of times and we kind of got to know each other, right? So like I would say, yeah, you're a friend, right? I would call you a friend, right? So that's so the TikTok universe is kind of weird like that, because I would say the people on my lives I've met through TikTok. Like I might have talked to them on the phone, or we might have done something like that because of the podcast or something. But I would say most of it is just a TikTok family, TikTok friends supporting each other. And then a few of them I've talked to outside of TikTok or met them outside of TikTok. But for the most part, like it's pretty much in here, in terms of like that. And then the other thing I kind of wanted to touch about too was like, you mentioned like the OnlyFans and, like stuff like that. But like in the firearm community during the pandemic, when they were basically banning any type of language, when you couldn't say the G word, you couldn't say the R word, you couldn't say the M word, you couldn't say any of those things on social media, they were banning you. Well, a lot of the guys in the firearm industry went to Pornhub and OnlyFans because you could say whatever you want on there. So they were like, and so a few guys, Tactical Rifleman did it as a joke, right? His handle, he was like, follow me on Pornhub. And he started a Pornhub account because of that, because he was going to get banned on YouTube. So he was like, I'm not joking. He's like, this is where I'm at now. And it was short lived. But it's just like, you have to do that kind of stuff, right? And of course, everyone's going to talk the worst, right? That's just how society is, right? Everyone's going to be like, oh, well, you have a social media. You must be willing to accept the fact that, people are going to find you and delve into your personal life. And you said it could be creepy for you, for some guys. It, could be flamboyant for others, right? Like that they're actually like you and want to share your stuff. So it's that risk you have to take, right? You're out there. And it's the same with me. Obviously, I don't experience it with many girls, but with guys, I do, right? Like, it's weird because it's like, some guys will come at me and be like, hey, I love your content. I love what you're doing. And they're like, tell me about this. And I'm like, why would you ask that? Like, well, it's bizarre, but it's like whatever, right? So it's just the weird things you have to deal with when you create a social media platform, right? And I've linked all my stuff. So I created the One Fun Guy podcast, and I am across the board. So, and I always say, find me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, subscribe, follow, like all my stuff. So I put that out there. And I know you do too, right? Because if you don't, you're not going to get the following. So you have to put yourself out there in the realm of saying, hey, listen, this is what we do. This is me. This is what I want. And if you want growth and you want, notoriety in what you're doing, the only way to do it is to sell yourself, right? Because you're your own marketing agency at this point.
I find it difficult because not that I ever had like a huge amount of views on my videos, but since I hit 10,000 followers, my views have just tanked. And it's weird because I would say most of my content is for women, but most of my followers are women. But most of the people who actually interact with my videos are men because they want, they don't really care about what my videos are about. They just look at me or whatever. They're being weird. But like, it makes it hard because women are not supporting me when the content is for them. It's the men. And then like majority of men who, do watch my videos, they're not going to post anything in like the comments or, it's just a weird dynamic that I think is kind of hindering my videos from going bigger because women tend to support other women more than men
Yeah.
do.
And it's funny because Haley talked about that. I follow her. We became friends. She's actually going to do the podcast in 2 weeks. But she said the same thing. It was always about the race to 10K, right? Like when you hit 10K followers on TikTok, you made it, right? Like that was like the goal. It was to hit 1,000 so you can go live, hit 5,000 so you can hit the TikTok shop, and then hit 10,000 so that they could see that you're now an influencer and that you can promote your thing. And most of the people that have hit 10,000K all say the same thing. Like there's something in the algorithm where like they are suppressing everybody's stuff. So Haley actually said the other day, she's like, I'm going to close my TikTok shop down. She's like, because it's not lucrative. It's not what I thought it was going to be. Everyone says, oh, you create a TikTok shop, you sell the products, people buy it from you, and you're going to make $5,000 a month. And she's like, it's not even close to that. She's like, it's not worth my time to make product videos that nobody's buying. She's like, I'm just closing my shop. She's like, there's no point of doing it anymore. She's like, I'd rather just make content and not sell anything. And I asked her, I go, why do you think that? Like, why do you think that is? And nobody can figure that out. Nobody knows. So there's something where they're blocking you from when you hit 10,000 followers, because you would think that if you get 300 or 400 views on all your videos at 5,000, that you should be at 1,000 every time when you hit 10,000, right? It's just pure math, right? Your number should double, and they don't. They actually go down. So there's something to be said about that, right? Like there's somebody somewhere's messing with that, and I don't know if they want you to hit 12,000, if that's like the new 10, or if 15's the new 10, like because the big milestone was 5K, right? When I hit 5K, all my videos blew up. I would go from like 174 or 175 views on a video where all I did was type in text, where now I get 300-400 people on everyone when I hit 5,000. But I'm afraid when I hit 10,000, is it going to put me back down to the 150 views again? Like, I don't want to do all this work for nothing, right? Like, I want people to see my stuff and get it out there. And I think that's where like the YouTube community is great, because the more people that sub to you, YouTube says the more we'll put your stuff out, right? The more subs you get, the more we do, and they recognize you for it, right? YouTube sends you a plaque when you hit 1,000 people. They hit 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. They send you those milestone markers along the way. Like TikTok doesn't give you shit, right? They're just kind of like, oh, thanks for playing our game, right? And it's all money, right? They're all getting money on us. All our videos, all our advertisements, that's just money in their pocket. They're making hundreds of thousands of dollars on us. And everybody around the world that's doing that, they're not a billion-dollar company for a reason, right? Like they're making money on everything we're doing, and they're not giving it out. It's all for me, not for thee. And that's kind of how I feel, right? Like, so all these people that created TikTok shops, unless you have 25,000 followers or more, your TikTok shop's not really doing anything, because they're not the traffic is getting stuck. So it's a bizarre thing. It's just weird, right? And I don't know why, it's the way it happens.
Well, I've also seen people, like, if you saw my kitchen table that I'm sitting at right now, it's just full of TikTok shop stuff and like videos I have to make. For me, I do it just to get the free stuff, because I save myself so much money by like getting, like, I have like 4 things of protein powder, but it's like I don't have to buy protein powder for like the next year, you know what I mean? Right. So it's so much money for free that even though I'm not selling anything, like the most video that gets stuff sold is this like castor oil pack thing, and I only make like $1 off of each sale, and I've sold like 10 of them. So it's like that video for some reason keeps getting traction, but the profit isn't enough for me to care. And I just use that money to put back into TikTok to buy more stuff. But like for me, it's a free stuff. But I've also been told that when you have TikTok shop and you have like a niche like I do, that it can mess up your algorithm as far as like who they're putting it out to, because then TikTok gets confused of what your goal of your page is. But it's like, I guess I don't expect to become some famous influencer, so it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. But I think that
it's not your personal.
Yeah, but I think that was kind of the market for TikTok, right? Like when I said when I hit 5,000 and I opened my TikTok shop, I said all the products I'm going to review are going to be for podcasting, right? Or doing some kind of radio interaction with people, right? So I was going to test out earphones, microphones, speakers, lighting, things like that you could use in a studio for podcasting. And I think that like with all the moms that do the moms of TikToks, right? Like, that's a big community, right? So a lot of them do travel stuff, mom clothing, stuff for their kids. And that was like Haley's thing, right? She's like, her TikTok is her family, right? So she gets stuff from the TikTok shop that families should be able to use. And she said she gets no traction on that at all. Zero. She said, so I'm using these products for my daughter, for my husband, for like, she bought them. I don't know if it was like a pair of shorts or something like that. And he did the video where he was in them, but it got like no traction. She's like, why am I, she's like, it's just a giant waste of time. So maybe she's using it for the free products like, you are, but like you would think that like you're doing stuff for dating, right? So like, obviously exercising is a big part of dating, right? Like you want to look good for people and you want to stay in shape, right? Also hair care products, makeup products, things like that, right? When you go on dates, you want to dress up and look nice. You're not going to go on a date looking like, you just rolled out of bed, right? But you're buying products for the dating scene and it doesn't seem to work. So I'm like, should I buy products for podcasting or should I do something completely different? Because it seems like when you buy stuff for your niche, it doesn't work. So I don't know, like, and I'm finding that from a lot of people are saying that, right? It's weird. And so if you're an outdoor channel and you buy products for camping and fishing and wildlife, those are all being suppressed, right? There aren't products to do that. And when you take somebody out on an adventure and say, oh, I'm trying this new flashlight I got from the TikTok shop, and you're in the forest and you're shining it, like you would think that that would bring a bunch of traction to all the outdoor enthusiasts. And it doesn't. They don't see those videos. So something's definitely wrong.
Yeah, I try to make the theme of my TikTok shop videos to be dating related, but sometimes I forget or sometimes it's just not possible. But
Sure.
I got that idea from someone else when before I didn't used to do it. But it's TikTok shop is just exhausting too because you have deadlines and they don't care if you're sick. They don't care if you're, going through something. It's like if you don't meet the deadline, then it's going to affect your score or whatever it's called. And it's like, imagine if it was back in 2020, when everybody was sick and, doing whatever, like there's no button that you can push that says like, I need an extension. There used to be,
Right.
but it was free. And, it's just, if it's from the actual TikTok shop and not like the email ones, like it's going to affect your future of your page. And it's like, it's very demanding. So I almost feel like it's almost like having a side job sometimes and you aren't
Right.
getting
Oh, for sure.
money from
Yeah.
it, but I would bet you I've probably got $3,000 to $5,000 worth of free products. So to me, it's worth it, but
Right.
it's
But
not.
that's the thing though, right? You probably opened up your TikTok shop on the assumption that you were going to sell $5,000 worth of product a month, right? That it was going to be easy because everyone was going to click your affiliate link and they were going to go buy it and you were going to get the commission on it and you were going to sell hundreds of these things and make a good money. And you realize very quickly that that's not the case. So now you're in the realm of like, why do I even bother, right? And I think that's kind of, what everybody's theory is now is that they put so much effort into making videos specifically for their TikTok shop, but they're not paying off. And there has to be a reason why that's not happening.
Well, I wanted to make, or I have made like my own t-shirts and different things on like one of those websites, that you can have everything just directly shipped from there. And I have another TikTok that I started that I haven't used yet, but it's like, it makes it hard for me to want to start it because my personal TikTok isn't getting any traction. So how do I advertise this other page and the product that represents me if nobody's seeing my videos? Or like I'll have like these really good stories I want to tell and I'm like, but nobody's going to see it. So like
Right.
I want to wait until I'm getting more, views, which I don't know if that will ever happen. So it's just kind of hard to put yourself out
Yeah.
there.
Oh, it's tough. It's not easy, right? And again, you have to ask yourself, like the people who are uber successful, right? That make $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 or more a month on TikTok. Like, how are they doing it, right? And no one wants to give up their secret. I get it because what works for them, they want to hold on to that. But at the same time, it's like there are people who are making that kind of money. Excuse me. How are they doing it? I mean, are they buying certain things? Are they like, are they meeting certain requirements? Are they doing certain things? Like, why is TikTok pushing their stuff, but they're not pushing anybody else?
I don't
You
know.
know,
It's just
and
who your audience is. And if TikTok, I always say TikTok hates me. So unless I want
Yeah,
to
but I think
start.
everybody's in that boat, right? Like you put in all this work and effort, right? So I don't know how many times you go live during the week or how many times a day you go live. I know a lot of people try to do those short bursts multiple times a day if they have time. They'll go live for 30 or 20 or 30 minutes and then they'll take a break. And then an hour later, they'll go back on for like 15 minutes, take a break. An hour later, they'll go back on for, 45 minutes. And they kind of do these multiple small lives multiple times a day to kind of boost the algorithm. So TikTok says, well, they're going live all the time. I'm going to put their stuff out. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But like for me, I only go live Friday and Saturday nights. I work Monday through Friday. So I don't do anything during the week. I come home, I spend some time, chilling out, vegging out, watching some TV. I don't want to come on TikTok and waste my night doing this. I could every night if I wanted to spend an hour on TikTok. I just opt not to. But every day from TikTok, I get the email that says, oh, well, you've gone down in a league. You have to go live more. If you go live more, we'll do this and we'll do that. And like I get all these emails and it's like, so obviously somebody somewhere is watching what I'm doing because they wouldn't be sending these emails, right? So every time I go live from Friday night and Saturday night, I get put in D1. And then because I don't go live for another 4 days until the next Friday night, I go back down to D2 or D3, and then I got to build myself back up, where there's people that are in the A League and they have 30,000 people watching them every time they go live. Like, how did they get to that point? And like, none of them will tell you this is what I did, right? There has to be some kind of secret involved in it, because if everybody knew what to do, everybody would be doing it. So how did those people get to where they're at versus us? Where when I go live, TikTok says, well, you don't go live enough, so we're not going to put your stuff out. And they're honest about it, right? They say, you need to go live more, go live at least an hour every day. I'm like, I don't have that luxury, right? If I was a stay-at-home dad or I didn't have a job, like, hell, I'd probably spend all day on TikTok, right? But I got responsibilities. Like I got work, I had a job. I can't dedicate my time to TikTok, unfortunately. It just doesn't work like that for me.
I just started going live, so Friday was my first time going live in probably like 2 years, if not year and a half.
Okay.
I don't know. But I went live Friday, and then I tried to go live yesterday, which I mean I did. I was on for like an hour and a half, but I didn't get the traction that I got Friday. And then during the week, I mean, I have all the time in the world, honestly, because I'm usually just on TikTok anyways at night. But the thing is that I don't look nice during the week. I don't wear a lot of makeup to work, and by the time I get off, I'm sweaty, and I'm not trying to like. This takes a lot of work to get ready, like
Sure.
for nothing, for nobody to see me in real life, So it would just be, during the week. I just don't think that I would want to have to.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah.
Do you feel you have to put makeup on to go live? Like, is that just kind of a self-conscious thing, or is that like you just want to present yourself the best way possible? Because for guys, it's different, right? Like, I didn't do anything. I threw a shirt and a hat on and came live, right? I didn't have to do anything, right? I didn't have to do a whole lot to get ready, right? I just kind of put an outfit together, and I knew that I was going to, after this, I have my podcast with Kelly. So I was like, I know he's going to wear a heavy metal t-shirt. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll wear, a band hat. And, it was easy for me to pick the outfit. Whereas like, obviously for you, I'm sure to put that together takes some time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I post a lot of photos on my TikTok of me with no makeup at all. Just basic. You just use like a TikTok filter to make you look a little better. But it's more of just like, I feel like the women that I watch that are like similar type of creators that I am, like they always look really pretty and they always look really nice, and that's how you get people into your lives. Like most of my live on Friday and Saturday were men. They're not going to stop if they don't see a pretty girl. Typically they're gonna, because I don't have like a topic that I'm talking about. I have to get them to create that because I don't have the viewers yet to like discuss a certain topic. And I don't know, like.
Well, what topic would you want to talk about? Like, maybe just do it, right? Maybe just roll the dice and say, like, because I'm the same way, right? So I always keep a journal with me, right? Like, I kind of write down, if something pops in my head, I'll make a note on my phone. If I don't have that, like, handy with me, like, I'll go to my note section. I'll be like, I'll say something like, oh, make a note of this, and I'll make a note of it. And then I transfer it down because, like, I don't know, sometimes just weird things pop into my head, and I'm like, that would be a great topic for conversation. And if I don't write it down, I don't say anything, an hour later, I'll be like, what the hell was that topic that I wanted to talk about, right? Like, I won't remember. So I always try to just make a mental note of something that is of note that I think I would want to discuss. But a lot of the conversations that I have always, we might start with that topic, but we never end on that topic, right? Like the conversation flows naturally and you just kind of go into where it takes you and you just kind of navigate it that way. And that's how I feel is the best way. I don't ever really run on script. Like I have bullet points of things I want to discuss. And if we get to them, great. If we don't, we don't.
Well, I only had one person on my entire live both days that actually brought up dating, because if you when you get onto my thing, it says like talk about it. But if I don't have anybody in the room that wants to discuss that, then and they're not bringing it up, or they're not, because I don't have somebody to talk to like how you and I are right now. My friend joining my live wasn't planned; it was just a random thing. And I think that time zones messed me up because I'm in Central Time, so all my followers tend to be either from here or California, and in California it's 2 hours earlier. And so I went on at like 10 last night, and half my friends over here were like, well, that's past my bedtime. And then my California friends, it's too early because they're not, it was only 8 o'clock there, and they're still doing things, and it's still, so it's kind of hard for.
And you'll never please anybody. But where I was going with this was like, if you had a topic that you talked about, and so let's say you were live for 30 minutes, right? You only had one person on and you talked about that topic. What you should do is when you're done, download that video and save it to your device, right? So any other social media platform you have, Instagram or whatever, take a clip of that, then it's saved on your phone, and put it on Instagram and say, listen, I talked about this last night. What does everybody think? And see if you get engagement on it that way. Then your next video, you should start off from where you left off on that topic, right? So at least you start to circumvent the engagement to say, okay, the topic of conversation was first dates. What's your ideal first date, right? And you talk a half an hour on what your ideal first date is, whether it's going to a movie, going to dinner, going mini golfing, whatever it is, right? And you don't get that much engagement, but you download the video, take a couple clips from it, and throughout the week, just post those clips on other social media sites and ask that same question. What's your ideal first date? And try to get engagement that way. Then when you start your next live, whenever it is, either the next night or a couple days later, whenever you go live next, you start your show with, okay, guys, last time we talked about first dates, and I got a bunch of engagement about it. What is everybody's ideal first date? And kind of just pin that stuff. And then the next conversation, post about that, and then keep going in that realm. That way you kind of build up the engagement, because if you talk about something and no one's involved in it and it just kind of becomes a dead issue, at least kind of maybe give it some life on other platforms. That's why, like, I post everything I do on TikTok. When I'm done, I download the video and it goes right to my YouTube channel, right? So I could at least say, hey, I went live on TikTok. Here it is. You can see what I talk about on TikTok versus my podcast, because my podcast is obviously a lot more structured. I don't have this stupid thing hanging around, right? And I don't it's serious and it's very informative and very involved, where this is kind of just fun, right? It's just two people hanging out talking about life. So it's a much different structure, but I still post it just so people see, like, this is me, this is what I do, right? So when I'm not podcasting, I'm engaging with people, and I often talk about the power of social networking, right? Like meeting new people, starting conversations with people, growing a relationship, getting people involved. And then that's kind of like, and I did a whole video about it last week about organically growing your channel, right? Buying followers and not buying views, and not paying TikTok $40 to boost your post to 10,000 people or guarantee that 1,000 more people are going to follow you, right? Like, I want the people that follow me to like me for me and what I'm doing, right? So all of my followers, the 5,600 that I have, they've all been organic. I've watched their stuff. They followed me. I followed them back. I post, they post, we comment on each other's stuff. Nothing's been where I've bought any of my followers on TikTok. I've not bought a single one. I've not boosted a single post. None of my posts, even the one that hit 5,000 views, that was not bought. That was earned. I just kept posting it and pinning it and posting it and reposting it. It was earned. I never did any of that stuff. And that's kind of like my message is like, I want all of my social media stuff to be genuine. I don't want to buy any of it. And I know it helps, right? If I had an extra $500 to spend on YouTube to get 5,000 subscribers, I would do it in a heartbeat, right? But I don't, and I don't want to do it that way. So the 254 people I have following me on YouTube have been everybody that's watched my stuff that I've asked nicely, hey, if you like what I'm doing, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and they've done it. So I take the organic approach. What's that?
I don't advertise my TikTok on my Instagram or my Facebook.
Well, you don't have to on Facebook because Facebook is more like real friendship, right? But Instagram's the same thing, right? People follow you on Instagram all the time, right? It's not. It's kind of like TikTok. It's they're not. I don't mean that negatively, right? Like I have friends of mine that are on Instagram that follow me, but for One Fun Guy, like I let anybody in the world follow me. Like I don't, if they want to follow me, it's a number's a number, right? So all my stuff on TikTok, I put on Instagram and my YouTube channel. And I kind of intertwined all of them together. And then my Facebook, what I did is I just turned my old Facebook page into One Fun Guy. And that's kind of, so you can find me anywhere now, right? So but I've integrated them together, right? Like I wanted to do that. I wanted to grow. And I used my personal page as a link to my One Fun Guy podcast account. And I said, okay, this is it. If you like what I'm doing, follow me here. Friend request me, I'll accept it. So it grew organically. But everything I do on TikTok, any TikTok video I make, I always post it to Instagram. Like that just goes without saying. I just always do that. And I just want people to follow me, right? So I created that for the One Fun Guy podcast. Now I have a personal Instagram page that is kind of private, but my public one, the One Fun Guy podcast one, I just created it and let everybody float on it. So, and that's where I post the majority of my stuff now. It's my go-to.
See, I don't post any dating related things on Instagram. It's just my personal life. But like, you can follow me on Instagram, obviously. But I just feel like it's kind of embarrassing for me because like I don't want like my real friends or people who know me in real life, they don't know TikTok me. So it's like I have posted TikTok videos on there back in the day when they were nothing to do with the same topic they are now. But like, I guess it's just like cringy to me. Like they probably think that my stuff is cringy because they don't like know that side of me. They just know like
Yeah, but again, is it cringy or is it light? Is it lighthearted fun, right? And again, I think what you might think is cringy, most people would be like, "Oh, this is fun." Like I never saw Traci in this light before, right? I never saw her, in this, right? Or I've never really thought about her like that, right? So most people might get humor out of it, right? They might think that it's lighthearted and fun, and not that you're asking for sympathy by any stretch of the imagination, right? But I think people will sympathize with your situation, right? About being single and dating in a world that's pretty obscure, right? Trying to find your soulmate and your right partner in a pool of how many 300 million people that live in the United States, right? And, small town versus big city versus urban and rural, like people are attracted to that kind of stuff, right? Like, I grew up in the city, right? It was very urban, and now I am somewhat rural. So like it's a transition, but I'm open about it. I talk about it. There's certain aspects I miss of living in Chicago, but there's a lot I sure don't, and I would never want them again, right? So I'm pretty candid about it, and I think most people kind of find it lighthearted when I kind of talk crap about the city of Chicago, just because I lived there for 34 years of my life before I moved into the burbs. But it offered a lot of nice things too. It's just now it's just crappy, right? I wouldn't go back.
I'll give you an example. Like if you've been following me on TikTok for a minute, like I talk about my type of like men, right? Who I like. And you'll see videos of me on motorcycles or dressed in motorcycle clothing because my ex rode motorcycles and that's just my type. It has been for years. But if I never vocalized that before, so one of the pictures that I took of myself, I posted it on my Instagram story one day, and my Instagram story automatically goes to Facebook. And then all of my friends, mostly guy friends, saw that and were like, "Oh, you're a biker now," or like all the jokes in the world, like movie jokes or like, all the jokes about me being a biker wannabe and all this stuff because they just don't know that side of me at all because I don't post anything really about like my personal life on Instagram or TikTok. So although it was lighthearted
Sure.
fun, it was annoying.
Yeah, and I get it, but again, that's what makes you you, right? Like, so obviously, right? Like when I talk about like stuff with Kelly now, right? Like I am a huge fan of heavy metal, and I listen to some pretty obscure music, right? A lot of dark, demonic in that scene. but I enjoy it, right? So when I tell people like I'm a heavy metal fan, and I want to see 1349, I want to see Immortal, or I'm going to see like these bands that wear the corpse paint and stuff like that. People are like, "You're into that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I like that kind of music, right?" I wouldn't go out there and normally say it, but like it's kind of what I'm into, right? So when I say that, people are like, "Wow, I didn't know that about you," right? Like I didn't know, and like most people have heard of Pantera and Guns N' Roses and Rob Zombie and stuff like that. So like when I say I'm a fan of Wantain, or I'm a fan of Behemoth, and they're like, "What the hell is Behemoth?" Right? And I'm like, "It's a Polish black metal band," and they're like, "Oh, that's weird. Like I didn't know you were into satanic bands." I'm like, "I'm not. I just like the music, right? That's their lifestyle. That's what they do, right? I don't." Practice it, but I was like, I like the music, right? So Cradle of Filth is probably one of the most obscure bands out there, and I'm a huge Cradle of Filth fan. I like their stuff, and I don't necessarily buy into the message, right? Like I'm not a Satanist, but I like the music, so I get that a lot too, right? People are like, "I didn't know you were into that." I'm like, "Yeah," like I'm candid about it, like I talk about it, right? So it's, I'm that's the kind of music I like, so you got to be you, right? That's the big thing, right?
Yeah, I think
If you're you and people come to terms with that, right? Because obviously the motorcycle culture has a negative stigma around it, right? Like bikers are obnoxious and they're rude and they're mean and they're, and you can't change that opinion about people, right? But it's you, if that's the kind of, people that you like to hang out with. I have a bunch of friends that are bikers and do that thing, and I'm friends with them, and I'm not going to say I'm not friends with them because they're bikers, right? But it's just it has that negative stigma. But I mean, if that's the kind of person that you're attracted, you can't help that, right? Like that's you. So it's just you kind of just got to be real about it, right? And again, thick skin is needed in this adventure we're on, right? Because people are going to say mean stuff about you. They're going to call you names for being weird, right? They're going to say, "Oh, I didn't know you like that. That's crazy, right? You're a Satanist, like you're satanic because you." So I'm like, "No, I just like the music, right?" But I say it. I'm honest, right? I'm vocal about it. So I think you'll find that if you're honest about it, like your true friends will know, right? Like they're gonna know, right? You're like, "Oh yeah, we've seen that before, right?" All your boyfriends have had tattoos and beards, and they know, right? Like so you can't say anything, right? That's the biker culture, right? And it's the rock and roll culture, right? Like I'm involved, like I got tattoos, I got 2 sleeves, right? So I'm like, it's the same thing, right? It's just the way it is. It's so if you're into that kind of genre of things, people that are in that genre will generally be like-minded, and that's what they are, right? So like I go to concerts all the time, and there's tons of bikers at all the shows I go to, right? That's just kind of what they're into, right? I like that kind of music. They do too, and that's what you see. So it's like it's there. But again, what people say about you or what they think, like you can't read into it too much because you're you, right? That's what makes you unique. And you like what you like, you do what you do. And if people are going to take it or leave it, and if they take it, you've got a new follower and you got a new friend. If they're going to leave it, they're going to leave it anyway. So I wouldn't stress out about that kind of stuff, right? Just be you. That's the biggest thing, right? And it's hard because you don't want to come out in front of a world of people that are going to watch this video and be like, "Oh, I didn't want people to know that about me," right? Like the more you're open and the more you talk and the more you're real about it, people will gravitate towards that, honestly. And you'll get the weird comments, you'll get the crazy stuff. It's in your head, and like I said, it was hard for me because I was attracting a lot of that kind of stuff, right? Like, but again, I was talking about it the other day, right? Like somebody said, like, what was the coolest concert you saw? Like one of my favorite concerts was Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson, right? And the people that Marilyn Manson attracts aren't the people that I would normally hang out with, right? Like I'm just gonna face it, right? Like I'm nothing wrong with the goth girls, right? The ones that wear the fishnets and the big boots and the black leather mini skirts and stuff like that. That's awesome all day long. It's just not my thing, right? But I'm not gonna be mean to somebody because they opted to dress like that, right? But it's just, I went to that concert and I knew what I was gonna expect, right? It's like when I go to a black metal concert, right? The people that are there are more than likely pagan, Wiccan, Satanist, right? They're as long as they're nice to me, I'm nice with them. They believe what you want, worship what you want to do. If you're mean to me, I'm going to be mean back to you. But if you're nice to me, I don't care what you believe, right? Like as long as you're cool with me, I'm cool with you, and I fit right in, right? So I never have a problem with any of that stuff. But I think you just kind of got to be real about it and be open about it and be transparent about it. And it's hard, like you said, you get into your own head. Like, what are people going to think? What are they going to say? Does it really matter at the end of the day? No. So that's the
no.
thing, right? And it's hard because like I said, we're talking to each other in front of a camera. I'm looking at my basement in front of me, right? And I got nothing there, but I know that when I post this video, thousands of people are going to watch it, right? So I just want to be entertaining and be fun and have people like what I'm doing. That's what really matters to me. So if I can do that and I can put a smile on somebody's face, I don't care what we talk about, right? Be you, and that's what I said. It's your channel, right? You're the one doing the dating, right? You're the one meeting guys. You're the one taking us on the journey. It's all about you. So who cares what anybody else thinks? Because people are in it for you, right? You're the focal point. You're the face of your channel.
True. I think that too, like back in the day when none of my family had Facebook, I used to be able to post things on Facebook that I can no longer post because now I have family. And then Instagram became my place to post. But now my mom has Instagram, and it's like now TikTok is the only place I really have to post things that, I don't want family or certain people to see because they might be inappropriate. So
and you got to roll with it.
I definitely
right?
have to at least censor.
And that's the thing. You're gonna say something, right? That's going to offend somebody, right? You're going to say something, whether it's about a certain topic, about a certain person, about a certain genre. You're not going to please everybody. And that's what I've learned right away, right? Like, again, I always said the two things I don't talk about are politics and religion. If they come up, I will talk about them, right? Like we talked about it earlier. But I don't focus on that. I won't say, hey, who are you going to vote for in the election, right? Like I would never ask somebody that, right? But if somebody says, hey, what do you think about this? I'll be honest. I'll give my opinion, right? It's not that it's going to matter or change anything, right? I'm one person. It's one person's opinion about something. But you know that if you say something, it's probably going to piss a lot of people off, right? So you got to kind of roll the dice about it and, pick and choose wisely. But we're all here to entertain people, and that's a little bit controversy kind of helps, a little bit exquisite language helps, right? We're not all perfect. We all drop swear words and stuff like that. So I think when people are real, people could appreciate that a little bit more, right? Like that's kind of what they can come to terms with, the fact that you can joke about maybe a bad date or somebody that, dropped a crappy DM on you or something like that. We could all chuckle about it because we've kind of all been there, right? Not everybody says everything nice to me, right? I get a lot of mean stuff and I'm like, okay, be the jerk about it, be rude, be ignorant, be whatever you want to be. But at the end of the day, I can't change it, right? I can't, maybe I could delete it if it's something that's like inappropriate, or I could, tell TikTok that I thought it was inappropriate, but at the end of the day, I can't stop somebody from doing it. And sometimes it gets the most engagement, right? A lot of times my friends will come to my back and be like, why would you say something like that? Now you got 20 or 30 people on one person who said something stupid. So sometimes it comes out to help you, right? So it just depends. And
Yeah.
and it's hard. And especially like I said, with you, I've obviously been out of the dating scene for almost years. So I have no idea, right? So everything that we do is always pre-planned. Hey, let's go here for dinner. Let's go here. Let's try this. Let's do that. Where you're meeting new people, doing new things, having new experience with new individuals. And for some people, that's enticing, right? Like they're like, oh, well, if I was ever single, I would want to do that, or I would never want to do that. So you're kind of the book that people are reading into, and it's your story that you're telling, right? And if people are interested in it, take them for the journey. It's part of life, right? It's an experience. And, maybe 5 years from now, you meet, the guy of your dreams, and you can look back and say, you guys can chuckle at it together, be like, wow, out of all the people I was with, like, look at these guys, right? Like, what was I thinking, right? How stupid was that? And you could just laugh at it, right? And grow from it. Every experience is a learning one. So, the more growth and the more knowledge and the more, positivity you throw into the universe, it's going to come back to you, right? Like, you're always upbeat, you're always smiling, sometimes you talk about like the bad stuff, but for the most part, like you're on a journey and people are there. This is your journal, right? This is your story. And so if you look at it from that angle, it opens it up to a more unique perspective, because obviously you don't want your coworkers to talk crap about you behind your back, but how many of the ones that are your friends are going to say, leave her alone? Like, you don't have the guts to do that, like she does. So let her be, right? You'll let people that are in your corner, and they'll stand up for you. They'll fight back. So look at it from that standpoint of it too, right? Like you're doing something that nobody else in your office would ever fathom doing, right? So right now, when you look at it, like you're the leader of that, right? Like you're the one putting yourself out there. They're not, because if they wanted to, they would. So it's
That's
perspective,
true.
right? So when you look at what everything you've done and everything you've accomplished on social media, right? And you can look back at your older videos and you could say, wow, I was younger then, or like, you said, you were a little bit heavier and stuff like that. Like it's a journey, right? You can look back and say, look at what I've accomplished. Like, look at what I've done. Look at how far I've come, how much I've grown, how much, you look at your sheer numbers, right? Obviously, when you started TikTok, you were one, right? Your first follower, right? Now you have over 10,000. You didn't get that because it wasn't like, oh, it was just, I just stayed, right? No, you worked hard. You created content, you made videos, you put yourself out there, you put in the work to get those followers. So you got to embrace that. Like, it's not easy, right? And so anybody who's hit 5,000 and 10,000 or 15,000 knows how hard it is to get those followers and to keep them, right? To keep them following you and not unfollow you. So it's hard work and it's dedication, and be happy about, like, be proud of that, like celebrate that. Because if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? That's what I tell everybody. If it's so easy to do a podcast, start one, right? It wasn't easy for me. I liked it. I loved the journey. I loved talking to people. I loved everything about it. But everyone's like, oh, well, I could do that. Well, yeah, then do it. You could say you can do it, right? Start one. See if it's easy. See if it's easy, right? Now I look at it and people are like, oh, well, you have followers now, you have subscribers, you have viewership, you have this. I'm like, but I didn't have it when I was in January and I was begging for 10 subscribers, right? Now I'm at 5,000 on TikTok. I'm at over 250 on YouTube. My Instagram, I think, is almost 1,000. But it doesn't happen overnight, and that's the point. Like, you've worked to this, like, so embrace it, like celebrate that, and people will come along. Like you'll see more people will be on your side. They'll be advocates. They won't be adversaries.
Yeah, I'll have to check out your YouTubes because I haven't never gone
Yeah,
into
and
that.
YouTube. Yeah, and,
I have
and
a YouTube,
YouTube is
obviously,
kind of,
but I don't.
like it's like anything else, right? If you're a content creator, like I don't create content. All the content I create is for my podcast, right? Like I don't take very once in a while I go to like a coffee shop and take a picture of a coffee, or like, hey, I'm at Starbucks, I'm hanging out, right? Because there's people that vlog, right? They do that. They take you to their morning run, or they'll take you on their morning walk, or they'll take you to the forest preserve, or they'll do whatever. I'm not that guy, right? I don't. If I do something for my podcast, I'll promote that, but I'm not vlogging. I'm not doing pictures. I'm not doing anything. Everything I do is specific for my podcast, but YouTube allowed me to grow in that capacity because all my stuff lives there. So it's like YouTube is a living journal now. So when I look back at my first couple podcasts, I'm like, man, that was rough, right? I didn't have the right sound. I was using my old Samsung phone because I thought I had a better angle of view on it. But I was like, I started messing around with my laptop. I started messing around with my iPad. I started messing around with my iPhone. And I was like, the iPad now is my go-to. So all the stuff I do is on my iPad. So everything else now is open. And my Samsung phone is sitting in my drawer. I haven't used it since. But that's how I started. I thought I was going to do what was best for me. And I look back and I was like, what was I thinking going on a small phone? Like, that was just stupid, right? But I did it. I didn't know any better. So my first 3 or 4 podcasts were on that phone before I went to the iPad. Now I would never go back unless I got a better iPad. So for me, it's just, the trial and error, but the journey's been awesome. So I can look back on my first couple of guests and be like, wow, that was pretty raw, but we did it, right? I hit the play button and I did it. Now I have no problem, right? I actually had to go out and recently buy a calendar that I could actually like write down so I don't forget who my guests are going to be, when and what time, just because now I line them up. I'm already booking October. So it's just, it's just one of those things where it just became more natural to me. And now I focus on it. And, like you said, it's like a part-time job for me now, right? Like I'm always trying to focus on this, right? Like, so for me, it's a big thing. So
Yeah, I definitely feel like I hold back a lot of things that I could say because I don't want to be that
sure.
person that like sits there and makes 10,000 videos about the same thing. Whereas in like YouTube, you have the capability to make longer videos.
I mean, it's just a suggestion. I find that YouTube is more friendly when you're doing stuff on social media because Facebook deletes everything after 31 days. TikTok deletes stuff usually after 2 weeks. So YouTube, it lives forever. It doesn't disappear until you delete it. So in a decade from now, you can go back and say, wow, look at this YouTube video I did from 2024, right? So it keeps everything on file. You'll never have that luxury with Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok because they wipe everything after 2 weeks or a month. Where YouTube, the only time it ever gets erased is if you go back and erase it. So it's a kind of a unique thing. That's why everything I do, whether it's through One Fun Guy podcast or the Pod Cult now, everything grows on YouTube. I just put everything up there. And then that way I could just focus on, what's going on from here into the next step. And then, the growth. And like I said, my biggest thing was when I started, everybody would always talk about my backdrop because it's my basement, right? It's my cabinets and everything. And they're like, you got to change your background, like do something cool. And I was like, well, what do you suggest, right? I don't have a backdrop. I don't have a green screen. I don't have any of that stuff. So people, when I started doing them, they're like, don't worry about that. It's fine, right? No one cares about that. It's your studio, right? That's what you're working out of. Don't listen to what everybody else says. It's fine. So now I just kind of left it. So now it's almost it was the one thing I didn't like about my podcast. And now it's kind of like the one thing I do like about it, right? Like, so everybody knows when I say I'm in the studio, they know I'm here, right? This is my spot. So if I'm on the couch or I'm in the den or I'm, anywhere else and I'm not here, they're like, oh, where are you at? Because they know they don't see this. So now it's kind of become my thing. Whereas when I first started, I was like, man, I hate that. I hate this backdrop. Anybody got any suggestions of, how I should change this or what I should do? And now it's become kind of part of my thing. So it's the little stuff, right? And it's just, how it maneuvers into, what you have going on and what you feel at that particular time. So I if I had any advice for you, I'd say just embrace it. To talk about what you want to talk about, you do you. People will like that. Don't worry about anybody else. You got to have thick skin, obviously, because you're going to get all the comments. But for the most part, just embrace the journey, right? You're on it, and people are focused on you. They're obviously watching you and your channel. Give them what they want to see, right?
I know. I got to get rid of that social anxiety that
And it
I
happens,
still
right?
somehow have
It takes
through
some
the
time.
camera.
And again, it's a vanity thing, right? Like you said, you want to look your best. You want to put yourself out there in the most presentable way possible. And it's like, and people are like that, right? Like you want to you're selling yourself, right? So you want to put out the best version of yourself. You don't want to come on when you're super tired and you're super droggy and be the Debbie Downer, right? You're only on because you have to because of the algorithm, right? Like if I don't want to come on, I don't come on. I don't ever force myself to do it, right? So last night I planned on coming on. I was dog tired at 9:30 at night, and I was going to hop on with you, and I was like, it's not going to go good for either of us because I'm like, I was dog tired. Like I'd have been yawning and doing all the stuff on live. And I just didn't want to do that to you, right? Like I wanted to be up and perky. So I knew tonight I was going to be on. We kind of had it worked out that we were going to do this, but like I'm the same way, right? Like I just want to give the best version of myself. I don't want to come on when I'm tired or, incoherent and not thinking about anything and just kind of mumbling. No one wants to see that. I mean, some people might, but I wouldn't want to listen to it, right?
That's true. Yeah, I find it like it's much easier when you're interacting. Like the night on Thursday, I was on for like 2.5 hours. I was like, oh my gosh, because I had someone with me and it was just me. Like the time goes by so slow.
And that happens, right? There's been nights where I've gone on and I might have one person watching me, or there's a big goose egg up in that top right corner. And I'm like, well, I'm already on. I'll see what's going on. But then I change my attitude because I'm like, well, I'm going to post it to YouTube. So at least it'll be another video up on YouTube. I find all the good things in it, right? Like it's hard. We joke around like this, right? Like if I wasn't on with you and I was live right now, I have 2 people watching me, right? I had a bunch of shares on earlier. I think at one point I had 10 people watching. Cool, right? But would you be able to talk in front of the mirror for an hour to yourself? No, right? Nobody would. But when you do this, it kind of seems like, even though you don't have engagement, you're still talking about stuff, right? You're still putting yourself out there. And you know that there's the possibility that somebody's going to see it, right? So that's kind of the psyche that you kind of have to go into, right? It's kind of like a mind over matter, because you wouldn't stand in your bedroom and FaceTime yourself for an hour, right? You wouldn't look at yourself in the mirror on the phone and talk, but you have no problem doing that here, right? So it's just getting over that hump, right? You would do that now, right? If I wasn't on with you and you were on your own and I was on my own and you had nobody watching, you would still be on, right? You'd still be engaging with people. You'd still be like, hey, if you hop on, say hi, share your stuff with me. But if you were sitting at home in your bed, you wouldn't talk to yourself for an hour, right? So it's just that kind of mentality that we're here doing this, right? So anybody who's on TikTok that's going live has the same fears, the same anxieties, the same everything that we both deal with, right? So it's not one of those things where this is abnormal, right? So because if it was normal, everybody would do it, right? Everybody who was on TikTok would go live as much as they could. They would do the best they could. They dedicate themselves to the TikTok. They would do everything they could to do it. So we're the abnormal ones, right? Me, everybody else who goes live. It's probably a very, very small percentage of all the TikTokers that are out there. There's over, I think, 30 million or 40 million people that are on TikTok. I would say probably about 200,000 of them go live on the regular. So we're abnormal. This is not the normal of TikTok. Most people want to just post their videos, do the stupid dances, do the voiceovers, and do whatever. But to come live takes some guts, right? To do it. To sit in front of a camera and talk to an audience of strangers is not an easy thing to do, right? And we're the ones that are doing it, and we have all the self-doubts, right? We're the ones that are questioning, why isn't anybody watching me? Why am I talking to myself? Why am I doing that? But think of all the other millions and millions of people who are so afraid that they won't ever hit the live button. They stay far away from it. So we're abnormal. This is not the normal of TikTok. So you doing this is a huge step. Whether it's, that should be the first thing for the social anxiety, right? Is you're doing it, right? You had the guts to hit the play button, to go live and hit that plus button and go live, because most people don't. That's not even a figment of their imagination to come and do this. So by you being on here now, you've already taken the step that millions of other people would never do. So you got to look at it in that regard, right? So you're willing to take the time to make yourself the most presentable you can, to get ready to go live. Most people wouldn't do it. They would go to say, maybe I will, maybe I won't, and they won't. So you're doing it. You're living that goal that most people would never do. So when you look at it in that perspective, you're already ahead of the curve by a lot.
And all my TikTok success has been motivated by men, because every time I go through something, I'm like, screw it, I'm going to do this. And I wouldn't have, if not for my last relationship, sure, this TikTok would have never happened, because I just used it to watch. And when we broke up, I was like, I've been spending so much time like playing games on my phone and doing all this unproductive nonsense that I should turn this into time to put towards TikTok. And then here I am. And then when I went live the other night, it was because I was pissed off, from what had happened that day with the guy. And it's all just motivated by the actual theme of
which is
TikTok.
good, right? Because that's what people want to see. They want to see you and the environment you're in, and they want you to wear your heart on your sleeve. Like, that's what people want to see. They want to see the happy times. They want to see the bad times. They want to see the good guests. They want to see the bad guests. One of the hardest things for me to do is to go live when somebody cancels on me last minute, right? So Lolo goes live. That happened last night. She sent me a message about 45 minutes before we were supposed to go live. I was like, hey, are we still on for tonight? She's like, I feel like a jerk, but I have to cancel. She's like, something came up and I didn't realize it. And I was like, okay, well, we'll reschedule. So I had to go live last night on Facebook Live and be like, hey, One Fun Guy podcast. As you can see, I'm by myself again, because life happens, right? I can't change that. I can't get a guest to come on within 5 minutes, right? It's hard. So I went live and I basically said that the podcast is going to be rescheduled. I apologized, but I went live anyways and did it. And then I used it as an opportunity to go live on Instagram and on YouTube, which I don't really ever do, but I think I'm going to start going live on YouTube more, because I had a lot of interaction on YouTube. And I actually got another subscriber last night by going live for about 10 minutes on YouTube. So I think I'm going to utilize that platform more and just kind of do that as opposed to, where I'm at now, where like when I have a scheduled podcast, it's great because we have a great conversation for about an hour and then I post it. But when they cancel on me, I don't have a choice, right? So I had to turn a bad situation into something positive, which it ended up being that way. And then, like I said, I hopped on with you and I was very tempted to come on live, but I was like, I didn't want to ruin it for you. I was like, literally, I had just gotten in bed. I was kind of just, I wasn't in the mood to go live and I was going to hop on, for your sake. But I was like, let's just plan it for tomorrow if you want to come on with me and we'll actually have a conversation. And, like I said, we've been talking now for over an hour and a half and it seems like it's been a few minutes, right? So, so it's cool. It's good to have interaction and it's good to be on. And then, like I said, whenever you're always welcome to come on with me, but usually the Saturday nights, I know Sylvia was on a few Saturdays ago, but I had like 7 people in the box. So it was like me and 6 other people and we were just talking. It was just kind of fun. So you're always welcome to do that too, just to get, and I usually go live with Penniless, and she says her title is Penniless Pagan, right? She's like, I know it hurts me because people think that I'm a witch and I'm like this some evil person. I was like, but you're not. You come on and you're fun and you're, and so we joke about that kind of stuff. But I mean, like, it's just interesting to have, more people on in different walks of life. And, and it's cool to do. So when you're, when you have something planned, even though you might not have a specific topic, involved, but it's just nice to be on with somebody because then the conversation flows. And, like I said, we started at 7:30 on the dot and it's 9:34 now. So we've been on for 2 hours and 4 minutes. So when you think about it, it's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah. Brandy, you should. You only have one. She's my friend from work.
She
I don't know if you
said
can
you
see what I
motivated
see,
me to
but
post a TikTok, right? That's the one, Brandy with an eye. Yeah. So again,
yeah.
like I said, how awesome is that, right? So you talk about your work friends and you being terrified that they're gonna, and now you're the trailblazer.
Well, the females don't count. The females are supportive. It's the men that are.
I
think I only have 3 or 4 people from work that actually follow me on TikTok.
And again, does it matter in the grand scheme of things, right? No, it doesn't. So, like I said, you be you. You do whatever you want to do. Talk about whatever you want to talk about and do it for you. It's your channel. It's not theirs. So as long as you're happy with what you're putting out, do it. Don't care what anybody else says, because it doesn't matter in the long run. And you don't want to have any regrets, right? You don't want to be like, oh, I should have done that, or I wish I would have done that. Do it, because you can look back and say, I did it, right? I was the one that did it. So that's kind of, how I look at stuff, right? When I'm like, oh, maybe it's not, maybe I shouldn't have said that. And I'm like, well, I can't take it back. I said it. So.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, she knows how work is, so it's like sometimes I want to post funny things just to like that aren't even true, just to see if it'll spread at
Why
work.
not, right? Make it a social experiment. And it's all genres,
Yeah.
right? It's all walks of life. I'm the same way at work, right? Like stuff we post about like employers and admin and bosses and things like that, like we all know that it's all in fun and games, right? But when you post it and you're like, oh shit, what if my boss looks at that, right? Well, who cares? You already posted it now, right? So it's out there for the world to see. So you got to live with it, right? And you rock it. And most of the guys, like, we don't give a shit like what they think. So we just kind of go for it, right? We're just in that same boat. As long as we're not saying anything like derogatory or mean or anything like that. But like you put out a funny meme about a boss, it's a funny meme. You're going to get a laugh, right? And if that boss happens to see it and knows what exactly you're talking about, well, they can't do anything. It's social media, right? You get your opinion. So it's.
Oh, we can have things
HR,
happen.
right?
We have a whole policy.
You got
about
disciplinary action, stuff like that. Like everybody has that, but as long as you're not posting anything specific or anything that's overtly vulgar or inappropriate, most of it just gets a chuckle, right, and move on.
Yeah. I think it's just been ingrained in my head from previous locations where they were a lot more stricter about things. That like as a supervisor, you just
Get
don't
it?
do that. Most supervisors will like delete their social media. So coming here where
Yeah,
it's not the same. It's
sure.
just I have to get mentality
Yeah.
to change, I
And
guess.
again, it's all within the realm of fun, right? Like you're not taking anything out of context. You're not posting anything that's going to get somebody in trouble. You're not posting anything derogatory. It's all in fun and it's all positive context. And you guys got to look at it from that point, right? So the haters are going to hate. Let them do it, right? Because they would do it otherwise, right? They would always, if somebody doesn't like you, they're going to find a way. So this is not fuel to that fire. This is, motivating other people, giving other people positive vibes, putting positive energy in other people's lives, because the people that are going to talk shit are going to talk it anyways, whether you do this or not. So do it for you. And it seems like you've taken that approach pretty well. So, whatever, anxieties you have about what people are going to say about you, they would probably say it anyways. But the people that would stand up for you when you're not there are going to still do that. So embrace that, right? And maybe you could change somebody's mind or opinion about you too, right? It kind of works in a,
It's true. The thing is, too, I don't talk a lot at work. Like I have that RBF 24/7 everywhere, not just at work. So I think people are a little intrigued by me because they're like, "Well, she's so mysterious. We don't know like to trust her or not, in real life." And then TikTok kind of, I guess, does give them a way to get to know my personality without because I am a little having social anxiety. I don't talk to a lot of people that I don't know. I'm very awkward. So it does, I guess, it can, I guess, make that more positive that they're like, oh, well, she is fun or she
absolutely.
is
And I will
nice
say
or
this, right? The more you go live on social media and the more you interact with audiences and the more you engage with people, you will find that it will start to show in real life too. When you go to social settings, you'll be able to talk to people a lot more. You'll be able to talk, to have a conversation. You don't have to be the awkward one sitting in the corner not saying anything. This does help you get over those fears. Now, I've always said I've always been a talkative person. I could give a public speech. I could walk into a room full of people and sit down and start talking to people. I was never shy. I was never the person like I could go right up to somebody and start a conversation. I never had an issue. So this was easier for me versus somebody like my wife who was like that. If I took her to a party, she's like, promise me you won't leave my side. Don't leave me sitting alone. If you go up, take me with you. And I'm like, fine, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Now, after her doing this for almost 9 years of being in front of the camera and social media, she's now just like me. She'll walk into a room and sit down and start talking to people, which is awesome because she wouldn't have been like that a decade ago. She'd been a nervous wreck going into a room where I would kind of sometimes leave her and go talk to one of my other friends or someone would call me over and I'd go. And then the next thing I know, I'm like, shit, I left her alone for like 20 minutes. She's going to kill me, right? She's sitting at the table all alone, not saying anything. Now she'll get up and start talking to other people too. So you'll see it. It does affect how you approach life. And it's a weird type of thing, but the more you go live and the more you talk and the more you engage with people, you'll find when you go to a bar or a restaurant, you'll be able to do that naturally. So it's kind of a cool thing too.
I need help because I don't have any friends, so I need to learn to go places alone and my anxiety prevents me from like going to a
Yeah.
bar alone or going to an event alone because I don't want to be
Right.
like a weirdo.
I
Like,
get it. And we've all been there, right? At some point, I was, like I said, I was very fortunate. My dad was a very social person. He was always kind of the life of the party. Wherever he went, people would call him over. And like, I kind of always had that where I was with him and I saw that. So I was never afraid to talk to anybody, even if it was a boss or somebody like a celebrity or whatever. Like, I never had that like fear of like rejecting that. I'm going to walk up to somebody and they're going to be like, get away from me. I just look at them as like they're a person. And now even more, doing this and doing the other stuff that I've done at work, like I can basically talk to anybody. So I was very lucky when I started this because I had no problem public speaking. I had no problem doing videos, training, teaching, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of had that in my background already. So it made this transition way easier than somebody who might have had that anxiety or might not have wanted to be the public speaker, or if they were at a conference, they would sit in the back right chair. Like I would always walk up to the front. So if there was something going on, I would never be the first guy like sneaking in, sitting in the back. I would always walk up to the front. Even if I was the first guy in the room, I would never sit in the back or in the middle. I would always go up to the front. So that was just kind of my personality. and the way that I approach things. So doing a podcast was very easy for me. Doing this in front of a camera, I never had an issue. I could talk to nobody for 2 hours. And that was the funny thing. Like my wife would say, she's like, who are you on with? I was like, myself. She's like, doing what? I'm like, talking. She's like, you were on for over 2 hours. I was like, yeah, so. Like I never had an issue with it. I could basically talk to this like it was no big deal. So for me, I never had that issue. It was never really a big thing for me. So I had been very lucky in it. But you will see over time, the more you go live and the more you interact and the more you engage and the more you do stuff, you'll find that in social settings, you'll feel more comfortable because you're used to doing it now.
Well, the funny thing is that I always did public speaking. I was in the church choir for 7 years. I did plays, everything public speaking you can ever imagine. And then over like maybe the last 5 years, I've all of a sudden created this new anxiety about public speaking that I never
Right.
had before, and I can't figure out why. And it's just like it has a lot to do with I think just what my job
Sure.
does to you because of the field that I work in, maybe. But like I have all these fears and things that I never had, and I don't understand it, and I don't know how to fix it. But like people can definitely like people that know me really well, like they're like, yeah, well, we can tell like you're awkward and you're weird, and I was never
Yeah.
like that before.
Well, like I said, sometimes, it's unfortunate, but jobs change people, right? Like the fields that you get into, sometimes you have to build that wall. Sometimes you have to be the jerk. Sometimes you have to be. So like things in our lives change us, right? I was just very fortunate that I was in a field where I could still be myself and I could still be positive and I could still have that. So for me, I was lucky. But, you know, sometimes you have to be that way, right? And sometimes when you're in an environment, sometimes it's better not to talk to your coworkers, right? Like it's better to stay private, it's better to be so you adapt, right? You're like a chameleon, right? So the situation you're in, the surroundings that you're in, the environment you're in, and sometimes it's best just to stay quiet, right? That silence is golden. So you transitioned yourself into that role where now you can kind of maybe come out of that shell again where you don't have to do that. You've worked at that job for quite some time and now you're in a more kind of friendly environment to say. So maybe now this is your opportunity to kind of let that go again, right? To be the boss that people could hang out with and, you don't have to be that person that shuts everybody down because sometimes it's easier, right? Because if you're mean or you're not likable, people won't approach you. And sometimes that's a good thing, right? Like they're like, I don't want to talk to her because this is not going to go well, right? So they just leave you alone. And sometimes that's the best for the environment you're in. But now, like I said, you're transitional. You've been a social person before. So maybe this now is an opportunity for you to come out of that shell again.
Yeah, because it doesn't help when you're single and men don't approach you because they're intimidated by your face.
But again, too, right? Like,
But that's
it depends, on the situation and what you're looking for, right? Because sometimes when you're not looking for somebody, that person walks into your life and you weren't expecting it, right? So sometimes that's kind of the way that it goes, right? When you're dating and you're on all these apps and you're actively looking for people and you don't find anybody, and then when you're like, you know what, I'm going to take a break, I'm going to give myself some time, that's when somebody walks in, and that's when you find somebody when you're not looking for it.
well, pretty much besides the most recent one, and we work together. Every guy I meet is from like an app of some sort, whether it's a dating app or just social media. But that was the first guy that ever asked me out in real life, probably since high school. Like people just don't do that anymore. So like it's so much easier on
And you
an
can
app
vet too, right?
because an app is like being on.
You can vet people on an
You
app,
can
right?
what?
You can see their picture, you can see what they like, you can see how tall they are, you can see, all that kind of stuff, right? So if somebody says, if you're 5'6" and somebody says I'm 5'4", and you're like, this isn't going to work, move on, right? So if somebody's 6'6" and you're 5'7", okay, now because taller girls kind of seem to have that thing where they want to be with the guy that's taller than them, and it's hard for the girls who are 5'9" or 6 feet, right? Because it's hard to find a guy who's 6'2" or taller, right? I'm 6'2", but it's hard to find somebody when you're 5'8" or 5'9" as a female because the average guy is 5'8". So it's the little things, right?
Well, I'm only 5. I still rather date a guy that's over 6 foot. And the other day I posted about the guy being 5'10", and I said that he was short, and some people didn't
Right.
take that too
Because
well.
that's what I said. The average height in America is probably
But
5'7" now, right? You would think that, back in the day, I think the standard was 5'8". So anybody taller than 5'8" was considered tall. But I mean, I would probably say now that's probably 5'7". So, I mean, when you think about it, like, you know, but it's preference, right? If you want somebody who's, a bigger guy or broad or muscular versus somebody who's skinny or lanky or, everyone has their own type. So, I mean, dating apps help in that regard, right? Because you can see, right? So if somebody says they're 6'2", 280, you know that they're going to be a big dude, right? They're going to have a football muscular build, right? Versus somebody who says they're 5'8", a buck 55, you know they're not going to have that.
well, circling back to our beginning conversation, when in a time now like where everything is so divided and like you're not gonna date people who don't have the same beliefs as you, dating apps make it a lot easier because I'm like, how do you go to a bar or to a public function? You see a guy or a female that's cute and you like them, but like you have no idea if you have the same beliefs. And these days, people are not willing to date people outside of their beliefs, including
Yeah,
myself,
it's
whether
hard.
it's political, whether it's religious, whatever. So it's like, it's almost like scary to meet someone in real life because you don't have any clue about, who they are. What are you supposed to
Sure,
do? Pull
right?
out like a
Yeah, that's
list of
exactly it,
questions
right?
to ask them before
You,
you decide
yeah.
to continue to talk
And
to
so that's
them?
the thing, right? Like, if you meet somebody who you're attracted to, but all you have is that attraction, it depends on how strong it is, right? Because a lot of people will say, all right, they're Buddhist and I'm Catholic. They like heavy metal and I like dance. They I'm a big artist and they don't know what, a paintbrush is. So, but you're willing to overlook all that because you're attracted to them physically, right? Where I think like the modern day age is kind of like less attraction, more connection, right? And I think that's kind of like the appeal now, where it's like you said, you have apps that if you're Christian, you go on Christian Mingle, or if you're, into, a fetish, you go on a certain, website for that, right? Because at least you find like-minded people in that environment, right? So I think that helps. Like you said, it's definitely a positive aid, right? Because if you're Catholic and you want to get married in the Catholic Church and you find somebody who's not Catholic or doesn't have a religious background and they're like, well, I don't want to. Well, already now you're trying to plan a wedding and you're like, well, how is this going to work? Because unless you get married in the courthouse, no one's walking me down an aisle, right? And if that's what you want, you kind of don't want to settle, right? You want what you want. So, like, if you had this grandeur of this like big wedding and this ceremony, and the person that you meet is like, well, I don't want that. Well, how will you prepare for that, right? So, like, at least if you know, you could say, all right, well, maybe down the road he can come around, or I can get him, to maybe open his mind up to us, stuff like that. But like you said, it's very difficult when you are two totally different people, but you have that like physical attraction, but that's only going to get you so far now. And I think people are starting to realize that, right? Especially, when I was dating, right? And I don't know how old you are, but I'm 44. But back in the day, it was taboo. Like my parents freaked out when I said I was moving in with my girlfriend, right? They're like, you're gonna move in with it? I'm like, yeah, like I want to make sure like we are compatible before we buy a house and get married and do all this kind of stuff. Like I want to know the person I'm with. But they thought that was like the most bizarre thing ever. They were like, well, why would you want to do that? And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I? Right. Like, and it was hard to break that cycle of thought because their generation, they were married at 18, 19 years old and they were having kids by 21, 22. And their lives were started like, I never thought about like, I was still doing beer bongs in college, right? When at 21 years old, right? I didn't even think about getting married or having a family, right? So, but that generation before us, that was the norm, right? They were well established by 25 years old. At 25
It's
years old,
it's that
I didn't know if I was coming or going, right?
that Catholic guilt gets to me too, especially about having
Yeah,
kids without being married. Because I'm 36, I'll be 37 this year, and I don't have kids. And like I have found one or two guys that I at the time was willing to have a kid with, but we weren't married. And I'm like, do I
yeah,
have time to get
right.
married to someone before I have a kid these days? Because I'm getting
It's
old,
tough.
But that
Yeah,
Catholic
and
guilt and that family
it weighs
guilt
in
is
on you, and it's tough, right? Like
hard.
I get that, and it's a very type of of situational type of thing where, you know, you have to look at religion obviously is important to you because you thought about that, right? You were like, well, I don't want to get married out of wedlock. I don't want to have a kid and force a guy if he doesn't want to be around, you know, or something like that. But at the same time, like, you know, you had an established mindset of what you wanted, right? And you thought about those things and you weighed them out and you opted to go a different route than having kids with a person that you might not have thought you were going to be with, right? So again, all of those situational things are going to guide you in the right direction. And eventually you're going to meet somebody, you're going to fall in love, you're going to be happy, you're going to live that life. And if kids are involved, great. If they're not, they're not, right? But like personal happiness is more important than anything, right? You don't want to have a kid just because society tells you you're 35 years old and it's going to be harder every year after 35 to conceive. So I need to have a kid by the time I'm 35, right? Because that's what basically like society tells you. But you have to outweigh circumstances, right? Like, and you did. You made the right decision not to do that, right? So it will all come back tenfold. Like there's a plan for you. It's you know, it'll happen. Just time, you know, is this is the path you're on for a reason. So look at it that way, right? So every relationship that you had that didn't work out, that is one step closer to you being on the path you're supposed to be on. Because if you would have married somebody and it didn't work out, you don't want to be the person that's had 3 ex-husbands, right? You've been divorced 3 times. Like that makes your situation much worse. So you were obviously smart enough and made sound decisions to lead you to where you're at now, which looking back on things is probably a ton better. And I'm sure you are happy with the decisions you made in your past, right? So just keep that in mind, right? You're on a journey and the chips will unfold and the cards will unfold the way that they may. And don't when you focus on it and you're super hyper focused, it's bad, right? Sometimes it's better just to step back, and that's when somebody walks in when you least expect it.
Hopefully.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
Trying to give up.
Well, I'm going to let you go because I have my podcast starting at 10, so I got to hop on with Kelly. When we're done, if you're still on, I know you put the makeup on, I'll come back on with you. We're going to only be on for about 30 minutes tonight. So if you're still...
Okay, I'm probably going to... And I'm going to get on after that. I
All
got to
right,
let
cool.
my phone
Well,
charge
I'll
a little
catch you
bit.
maybe in a little bit then. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. Check out the pod cult, guys. I'll be on in about 5 minutes. It'll be the pod cult on Facebook. So see you guys there. All right. Thanks again, Traci. I'll see you in a little bit.